Hey YouTube! Hey guys, we are here on Tesla Autonomy Day, which, as some of you may know, is also Earth Day. And it was Easter yesterday in most of the world, or Passover. So it's actually, there's a lot going on here. Let me flip this, see if I can flip this camera around. So you can see I am here with the Tesla Live broadcast. And right now it's actually, they're just showing some scenes of cars driving around, nothing fancy or anything. But I just want to give, my review and comment on everything that's going on. Some of you guys may know I've had yeah, it's not 2 yet. That's right. I started at 145, as I announced on my channel a couple days ago. I want to give a little introduction before it starts, and I'll give my review and comment when Elon and everybody else shows up. So, as some of you guys may know, let's flip this thing around. Sweden on board. All right. Some of you guys may know I have had a Tesla Model X now for a little over 2 years. And when I bought it, I got the full self-driving option, which was like $5,000. I got an enhanced autopilot, all that. And I've been waiting for the day when, I can have this thing drive on its own. And you may have seen I released a video this morning, a little while ago, like an hour or so ago, talking about having fun with a Tesla Autopilot, Navigator on Autopilot. How many miles do I have? Okay, I've got 94,000 miles. I'd say at least 90,000 of those are on Autopilot. So I've seen this thing go from like its infancy in AP2, because I've got AP2, and since I've got full self-driving, they upgrade me to AP3 hardware, which is no swap of the camera. It's just like a new computer. Donovan, yeah, thanks for watching me. So my car has gone from like, I remember when it used to swerve back and forth. It used to do like this, back and forth on the highway all the time. And I was like, this is so annoying. How are they ever going to improve this thing to get to the point where people are actually going to want to use it? And yes, I am getting hardware, AP3 soon. I don't know when, but I've already paid for it. So it's just a matter of waiting till a Ranger shows up, right? Because they say the Rangers can install these computers and installs my new computer. And I cannot wait till that happens. Hey, hello out there, everybody. We got like 10 people watching right now. So I am so interested in what they're going to say. I did a few videos on the channel within the last few days. If you check them out, you're going to buy a Model 3, cool. Check out the videos I did in the last few days. I gave my predictions. I think that Tesla's going to announce at some point, either today or in the near future, that all Teslas will be upgradable to full self-driving in the near future, including ones from 2012. Okay, and I explained my reason why in the video, so search the channel and find that. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, by the way. We're constantly doing videos about this. Oh, you're getting Model X. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit different. It's Falcon Wing doors. And much bigger interior. That's why I got bigger interior, off-road capabilities, and Falcon Wing doors. Those are the main reasons for buying Model X. And anyway, let's see. What else am I saying? Oh, I think that they're going to make that announcement about all Tesla cars. But I do think that some people have already said they'll make the announcement. It's not a surprise or anything that Tesla is shipping cars with the new hardware 3. Do I announce a refresh? Yeah, possibly a refresh of X and S, but I don't think at this event. It might be like an extra thing, like how the Roadster was an extra thing at the Semi event, like a year or so ago. But I don't think that's the point of this, this thing that Elon's putting together. I think it's gonna mention that hardware 3 is in cars now, cars that are being produced. As some of you know, I made a video about that 2 weeks ago or so, that they were shipping cars with the hardware 3 full autonomous computer that can handle the neural network and be at like 20% capacity when it's running instead of like 80% that mine is. And because mine's at 80%, I could barely just do basic stuff. I mean, I can't barely surf the internet with what I've got, so I cannot wait to get the new computer. Let me flip this thing around, see what Tesla's video is doing here right now. You guys can probably watch this too on the Tesla channel if you want, but you're not going to get the review and comment that I'm going to give you. So you got to talk about full self-driving. Yes, they're definitely going to talk about full self-driving. That's the whole point of this thing is, let's see, flip that thing around. Full self-driving. So they're just going to announce the timeline, I think, which I think a lot of people know maybe by the end of 2019, which we're in 2019, that they'll have some of these features available, but they're subject to regulatory approval, and that's going to be the big caveat here. That's going to be what Elon is going to say, hey, I'm doing all this, we're doing all this, but if the regulators don't approve it, then we can't, we can't do this. So I think that the regulators are going to be the big holdup, and they'll probably end up blaming it on the regulators, and who knows. But as you know, they've already announced and I've seen some videos of the new enhanced autopilot, enhanced summon. I'm sorry, Autonomous, yes, it definitely will be. The only question is whether they can do it with the cameras alone, the visual cameras that they have, because they don't have any LiDAR on the cars, and everybody else is using LiDAR. Tesla is only using visual cameras. But the Summon, okay, the enhanced Summon, it only runs at 3 miles an hour now in a parking lot. It's just crazy. Without regulation, yeah, I mean, they can do a software update, but it has to be on private property only. That's the thing. They need regulatory approval for public roadways and for insurance and all that. And I don't know how insurance is going to handle it, but you guys probably know, I've done a video on this as well, that Tesla has a relationship with Liberty Mutual for insurance, and I have their insurance. And I have a feeling that it's going to be addressed a lot more completely with the combination of insurance and the vehicles. So we'll see. Anyway, I think also Tesla is getting all their mileage on. Let's see. Yeah, I hope the regulators are going to approve it. I think Tesla's getting all their test miles because they have a fleet of 500,000 cars now on the road that have 8 cameras on them. And like I said, I think the other ones will be upgradable for probably a nominal fee. I don't know, maybe, let's say it costs $5,000 to go for full self-driving. Maybe it'll cost another couple thousand to put the cameras and the new computer in. Maybe $10,000 upgrade your car. And as I said in the recent video, I think that no Tesla, because of this, which they haven't even announced, but I think that they will announce it either today or another day. Oh, let's flip this thing around. That no Tesla will go down below, I think, maybe $25,000 in value, ever. That's not wrecked or in need of serious body work. See what? We still have 9 minutes left. Okay, that was a false alarm. They're just doing other fancy little stuff here. Yeah. So that inside, you're welcome. I mean, these are my guesses because I've had so much experience driving the car, watching other cars, seeing where things are going. Hey, Mark, thanks for watching the channel. Yeah, I'm just excited that we get to witness this change over to full self-driving here, kind of right in front of us. And I think that Tesla not only is the only true electric car manufacturer out there with any kind of a real sizable market here, at least in the United States, but I don't think any of the electric car companies have this infrastructure of the neural network, the 8 cameras on 500,000 cars driving the roads right now. And of course, the other key is the computer. That's what I think Elon's going to spend a lot of time focusing on, the computer today, the hardware 3 computer. That is just, like I said, so much faster than the other computers. Like, you can run at 20% what my computer could run at 80% workload. So that's it. Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I cannot wait till they turn the switch on. I'm excited every time I get a software update in my car. Because I always want to see what the next feature is. And I did a little testing too on the Navigator on autopilot the last few days since I got that update, and it's a little slow, okay, but I have the old computer, so who's to say what it's like with the newer computer, with the hardware 3, right? I don't know. And it's a little slow, but I think it'll get there, and it seems to hesitate. I'm not sure how much of that is the computer, how much of that is a data set. I mean, it also could be that they're going to need to upgrade everybody's cars to 5G, okay? Because I think we have 4G right now. I believe we do. Or maybe it's only 3. I don't know what they're running, but they need the fastest data speeds possible. Hello, Mr. Proprano. We need the fastest data speeds and like 0 latency. So I think we're gonna need to upgrade to 5G as well. So the technology is just hitting the marketplace right now. And I think that's why all these other cars, like, actually I was talking with Denise the other day, and she's like, why don't they just make cars that people just want to buy now? And I'm like, well, that's what all the other manufacturers are doing. They're making cars that people want to buy right at this moment in time, and they can sell them for less. But Tesla always wants to stay ahead of everybody, so that's why they're doing all this stuff. And I think that they still have a huge lead over every other manufacturer out there. Yeah, 6G will work too. Anything more than 3G or 4G, we'll take 6G. That'll work. So, let's see, how much more time do we have? Everyone's going to need one. Hey, what do you guys think? Actually, I'm curious, because Tesla and Elon Musk may talk today about the ride sharing, the Tesla network, I guess it is, right? The Tesla driver autonomous network. Could be better in certain countries, wider roads. I think what's hardest to learn for autopilot, Mark, is roads with no lines on them. Okay, I've done so many videos. It never works on a road with no lines on it unless it's got clear pavement marks, okay, like right down the middle between where you can see where one pavement seam is on one side and the other on the other. That's the only time it has a prayer of working right now on a road without lines. So I think regardless of what country you live in, if there's a road with no lines, that is like the Achilles heel of the system right now, in my opinion, having tested it as much as I have been testing it. So, but the computers will be big. What else? Well, just the fact that Tesla has all these systems in place that the other auto manufacturers don't have. I think Elon and Tesla were very, very smart about putting all these systems on the cars early. Is a Tesla a 2.5 or 2 autonomy? I think it's right now they're 2. That's from what I understand. But they can easily go up to 4 and hopefully 5, which is what I paid for. So it's just going to require the fact that they have all 8 cameras, which 500,000 Teslas on the road produced since October 2016 have all 8 cameras, okay? And the newer computer. Everything else is in place. The systems connecting the car, the wiring harnesses, I believe most of the wiring harnesses are there. The connectivity to the internet, continuous, it's all there. No other cars have this. So that's why Tesla has such a big advantage, and it's real simple. It didn't cost that much for cameras to put it in there, and the fact that they did the upgrade method with the computer, making it upgradable. And like I said, I think even older cars are also upgradable because they have those markers between the front tires and the front doors. If you look on there, okay, they have little cutouts, and they can put cameras in there. Are any cars on stage better enhanced? I have to read that again. I'm not sure what that was. Here it is. Tap this, right? Learning how to use this. Live chat. Okay. If any cars are called on stage, they better use enhanced sound, not anyway. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Okay. Whoop. Let's skip that. Sorry. Still learning how to use this. Tesla is so different. Yes, of course. Really hope Tesla shines today. So much FUD out there the last couple of days. Yeah, people still think that Tesla's going to go bankrupt. That's why I wrote that in the little poll that I put for this live chat. I'm like, people think they're going to go bankrupt. It's just like last year all over again when the stock started to sink. Do you remember that? Yep, there it is. Tesla's going bankrupt. Do you think so? I don't know. I mean, I think as long as they can get Model Y out quickly, there's no way they're going bankrupt. They got a small electric SUV for under $40,000. Okay, I think that's going to do it. I mean, that's going to propel them way, way out in front, even more so than they are today. 3 minutes left. All right. Yep. Okay, I see it up there now. 3 minutes left. Yeah, I don't think Tesla's going to go bankrupt. I mean, Elon Musk has a habit of being reckless. I think everybody agrees with that, right? Elon Musk is reckless. Okay. Yeah, thanks for those comments. Okay, Elon Musk is reckless. He drives his car company. He operates his car company like he's driving a sports car on the edge of a cliff continuously. Okay, there's no question about that either. I think we all know that. The only question is, can he pull it off? And I don't think that they're in a bad position right now in terms of how they've been over the last few years. I think they've gone over most of the hurdles. The only question for me is going to be, are they going to stay out front? Do they have what it takes to motivate themselves to continue to stay out front? Because whenever you have a lead, it's great. But then when you have a lead, so many companies just rest on their laurels, especially this describes the American car companies in general, especially through the 70s and 80s. I don't know what they were thinking. Everybody blames it on the unions, but I think it was all top management as well. They could have done something different. Who knows? But either way, rest on their laurels. Next thing you know, somebody has some better ideas, newer ideas. They're willing to take some risks. And next thing you know, they're almost irrelevant. There's a paradigm shift. There's a total disruption of the industry, like we're seeing here with Tesla. And I think that, that's why I'm excited about this broadcast in particular. I think we're going to get some good insight from Elon. And I think some people are going to be, if he says the things I think he's going to say, some people are going to be really surprised. I think it'll really affect the stock value personally. I think the stock value will be very, very positively affected by today's talk. So, all right, let me switch this camera back around here. See where we are on the broadcast. I'm still seeing pictures of Tesla cars driving, and we have 1 minute left. So I'm not going to turn the sound on because I've had some experience already where my videos got blocked worldwide because I had copyrighted material playing in the background. Like when I went to the Tesla Model Y unveiling, if you guys watched that one, That was one of my most watched videos ever, but it got blocked because there was all this copyrighted material playing in the background. So that was no good. All right, let's see. We are just about there now. I have 2 p.m. on the dot. I've still got just some generic noise music playing in the background. Do you think Ford and GM are going back in black and BK next recession? I don't know if they're going to make it. Personally, I just don't know. Yeah, I think that they've, just like what happened in the 80s, they got caught with their pants down, and Tesla caught them with their pants down again. I don't think they can survive another round of that. That's my own personal opinion. And it's not just that they're lacking electric cars, it's that they're lacking electric cars with the systems that Tesla has, okay? With the internet connectivity, cameras, computers, everything electric, everything connected, really. Everything truly in the car is connected. If you've ever, if you've owned a Tesla or driven one, you realize that. The car is so aware of so many things. People can't even steal them. Well, they can, but they're going to be found so quickly because Tesla knows everything about these cars. You kind of give up that in a way, freedom and privacy when you own a Tesla. I'm just like a beta tester now, an unpaid beta tester. But that's just the way it goes. Do I earn anything? Oh, here we go. This is it. Yes, I do earn some money from YouTube, thankfully. And thank you for subscribing. If you guys are not subscribers, please go ahead and subscribe. Okay, it's got that music again playing. I'm gonna turn it down. I know how that goes. Actually, let me turn down the lights here so I can get a better video. There we go. Better video on what's going on so I can see it better and give you my inside commentary. There's the Model Y. That's the one we saw, that blue one. By the way, at the Model Y unveiling, that blue one was a real car. We drove in it. The white one that you saw at the Model Y unveiling was a clay model. Okay, a lot of people didn't ever talk about that, but it's definitely just a clay model. That's all it ever was. That's why they wouldn't let us touch it. I like how that leapt forward. There you go. All right, we're still waiting. Where are you guys? Sandy Monroe, and yes, I did. And I thought the Monroe thing was a joke about how, if you, just the one fact alone, how he said that Tesla is never going to produce any of these $35,000 Model 3s, they're never going to make any money. Then they come up with another video saying, oh, they're making like 25% profit off these. I can tell you now, because at first they couldn't tell because it had so many high-tech components in it that they didn't even know what they were talking about. And then once they did their own research and learned, and it was funny because Tesla had to school them, I guess, because they didn't even know what they were pulling apart. They realized, oh yeah, Tesla is going to make some money off these cars. They're going to make a lot of money. So I think Monroe's good, but they're definitely in bed with the internal combustion engine manufacturers. That's who they're in bed with. So you gotta consider the source on what they're giving you. And I do like that they at least admitted they made a mistake on the Model 3 and that they're going to be able to make money off them, and a lot of money. But the initial videos that came out from them were nothing but propaganda, in my mind, from the oil companies, from the internal combustion engine manufacturers, from the legacy auto manufacturers to try to discredit Tesla. That's what they were. And it's too bad. But it's amazing how fast they had to retract all that, though. I guess it just shows how we're in the age of information. People can look this stuff up. I'm glad that we're at a point where we can do that. And come on, Elon. I guess this is another case of Elon timing, right? Elon timing at its normal. Put the autopilot. That's autopilot on Model 3. Yeah, I'm not used to driving Model 3. Model 3 is definitely designed to be an autonomous car with that screen in the center. Definitely designed. Yeah, making him a Tesla fan. Yeah, I'm glad to see that, Mark. All right. Come on, Elon. Making us all wait. All right. Well, yeah, I don't think they're going to say anything. I'll flip the camera back around since we're obviously waiting even longer now. But I turned the lights down here, so you're not going to be able to see me as well. But Elon is not going to announce Model X and S refresh, I don't think, unless it's a surprise. Like I said, it could be a surprise, like add-on at the end, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is just to prove to people what they've been working on, what's in the pipeline, I hope, for development, and where the computing power is today, and the fact that he's got to convince people today that the visual cameras alone are actually going to do the job without LiDAR, because there is a little radar module in the front of the car, but there's no LiDAR. And here's the rub. Here's the thing that he probably will never address today. But what happens when you get dirt on the cameras? I mean, they do get dirt on them, and they can still see. Sometimes they can make out images, but you're going to get to the point where, and even I saw something on Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports is still anti-Tesla as far as I'm concerned. They're like, oh, this stuff's never going to work. It's what if one of the cameras gets dirty? And they are true. What if it gets dirty? I mean, how are we supposed to know? Will the system say, hey, this camera over here is dirty, pull off the road and fix it? Lori, can you say my name? No, LAU96. LAU96. Lao, it's not Lori. Lao96. There you go. I said it. How's that? You like that? Okay. All right. Well, anyway, in terms of the cameras, it is just a visual system for the most part, with the exception of that little radar in front. And no LiDAR. So if the cameras get dirty, what happens? Supposedly they have fail-safe and multiple levels of stuff. So need downward-facing cameras. Huh. Interesting. Who knows? I don't know if they'll add more cameras or not. But, let me go back to the year 2016 when I ordered my Tesla. One of the reasons I did was because Elon promised that my vehicle would be full level 5 self-driving if I bought that option. Hey, you're from Romania. All right. Way to go, Romania. Maybe I'll go visit there some year. I was in Europe last year in the fall, but I did not get to go to Romania, but maybe in the near future. So, okay, as far as what's going on with, Elon, I wonder, he's going to have to try to convince people today that LiDAR is not needed for full self-driving. And a lot of manufacturers have not been able to do that. Yeah, maybe we can meet. Yeah, definitely. Send me a private message. Let me know how to get in touch with you. Okay. And actually, if anybody else wants to get in touch, that's how you do it. There's some kind of if you go to the channel, there's some kind of contact info. You can send me a private message through there. Just know that I don't check it that often. That's all. So, today is Earth Day. I want to announce that. You guys probably know that, right? Earth Day. So, which is very fitting to have the full autonomy day, since from a company, Tesla, that's a vegan company. I know people get mad. They say, oh, no, it's not really vegan. Well, they're the only company out there that makes all-electric cars, which is the most environmentally friendly form of vehicular transportation available today. And they have no leather seating surfaces even available anymore. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the most vegan vehicle company in the world. And the fact that they're doing this on Earth Day is also good. I wish that Tesla would kind of get more onto the veganism thing, because they have such an advantage there. And vegan people, and I'm vegan, by the way. I have another channel. Check in on the right column of my channel that you're watching right now. It's called applantbaseddiet.org, and we are a nonprofit. But anyway, vegan people are so passionate about stuff. It would be so much for the company, I would think, to call themselves vegan. But I think that they're afraid they would alienate other consumers, because right now they're such a niche company, I think that's the only thing that's holding them back. What do you guys think? You can let me know if you guys are vegan out there, any of you, or if that would turn you off if Tesla said we're the world's only vegan car company. I don't know. But I'm sure that most car companies will be vegan in the near future anyway, so that may be not even necessary. But as long as they can sell enough cars. But I know that, speaking of selling enough cars, demand has been an issue. I think you guys know, for the Model 3 here in the United States. I think they probably sold out of all the reservations. They're shipping overseas, and there's a lag, and that's why Tesla's probably going to have a loss for the first quarter of 2019. But I think it's just momentarily, and I think as soon as they can get that Model Y out, that's really going to help things. Tesla driver who does the same content as me. Oh, okay. I'm much better, but he puts nice. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I don't have the video skills. Yeah. Editing my captions. What do you mean editing my captions? What does that mean? Does that mean like when you see the video in YouTube, like an intro screen or a What does that mean? Do I have any problems? I haven't had any problems with my Tesla in over a year now. I had lots of problems the first year. Yes? Okay. Okay, yeah. Hey, Mark, if you have any suggestions on how to make a little cover screens like that as easily as possible, please also direct message me that. I'd definitely like to learn about that. I just have very limited time, so it's got to be quick and easy because I'm spending most of my time making content. Oh, Tesla cash flow. Oh, gosh. Well, most of the accountants that get on with the company, they quickly leave because they know that Tesla is driving this company on the edge of a cliff the whole way and betting the company every single time they launch a model. I bet you the company will be bet again on Model Y. Oh yeah, the intro's gone. Oh yeah, Mr. Pop. I don't do the intro anymore. I don't like it either. So, well, I have a Tesla Model X 90D from 2017 build. It was built in February. It has an autopilot 2, but I also purchased full self-driving. So, what's going on with Panasonic? Okay, I did a video on this too recently. Check the channel. Panasonic, I think that Elon Musk and Tesla have loved getting rid of Panasonic as far as I'm concerned. Every 2 weeks, Tesla unlimited shipping. Oh, that's good. Good job. Okay, but I think that they're glad to get rid of Panasonic in a way. I think the news that Panasonic is not going to be expanding their operations is music to Tesla investor ears, music to Elon Musk. He typically will learn from a company. He'll learn all of how they do things, and then he will just go off on his own after he learns their stuff. Like they did with Toyota and the electric RAV4 in California, before Tesla actually started building their own cars, did the same thing. Should we long Tesla stock? Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I bought Tesla stock last year, and I've done some videos on that. I think I paid like $253 or $256. It was a time about a year ago when everyone thought Tesla was going bankrupt, kind of like now. We're ramping back up. That momentum is building again right now. And when it's low like that, I would buy it long because I do think the more I spend time in Teslas, drive Teslas, see what they're doing, they've just got these systems that no one else has. At Model S for 1 year, $35,000, bought it, used 2006 AP2, had a door handle go out. Otherwise, yeah, that's good. Perfect. Those door handles are no. Yeah, they would love to survive without Panasonic. They would absolutely love it. Okay, I think that it would benefit Tesla financially. I think Tesla and Elon already know all of Panasonic's secrets now, and because of that, they're ready to part ways. So I guess this is a nice, convenient drop in demand, right? That's what I think anyway. Convenient for Tesla investors, for Tesla people. Not so convenient for Panasonic, but Panasonic is just a manufacturer of electronic components like this, right? So they got to keep their money coming in. Yeah, that's a good question. We're on Elon time. We know how Elon time is, right? Yeah, I have no idea. But Elon time, even though he's off on every single time thing he gives, Max, what? Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that new battery company. I'm not really sure. I can't tell you that. I don't know why it hasn't started yet. That's a really good question. Maybe they crashed one of their autonomous vehicles driving it on the stage. I don't know, although I doubt that happened, but who knows? Required for Tesla to be the Max? Maybe, yeah, because it could be that they're moving in with Max. Okay, it could be that this is new battery technology company. It could be that they're moving into a totally new type of technology. They don't need Panasonic anymore. Not only because they learned everything that Panasonic has, but because they're on to the next thing. And hopefully Tesla is on to the next thing because they need to be. Otherwise, they're going to have to keep innovating somehow. I think Elon will take humans to Mars. Yeah, if you've got the money, I'm sure he will. Him and his billionaire friends will be the first ones to go, probably. SEK $20. Is that that's the battery company? Oh, that's your time in Romania. Okay, your time in Romania, 21:30. Okay, so that means we have another what? You think it's going to start a half hour late, right? That means we got another 16 minutes to wait. We can talk about more things, more predictions. Well, okay, let's talk about this. Elon says he thinks that some of the first full self-driving features are going to be released by the end of the year. Is that realistic? Yeah, they're always late. Elon Musk's time is always late. So I think it's probably not going to be till maybe, I think they may have the features developed by the end of this year, and the computers and the cameras on the cars. But regulatory approval may hold them up another 6 months. Is Lexus the most eco-friendly hybrid? Well, I have a Lexus. I bought one in 2012 when Tesla just launched the Model S because they didn't have any supercharger system, and I need to drive long distance. I still have that car. It's a great car. I highly recommend that. It's a small one. You already got it. Just needs to finalize and legalize. Yeah, you might be right. But yeah, I guess there's always some uncertainty with key Tesla employees leaving the company. I know about a year ago, the person that was in charge of the autonomous driving, I think, left the company, head of engineering from them. So I don't know. It's just making this leap. It's making this leap and being able to do it financially. And Tesla's got the systems in place, but whether they can actually pull it off, it's always going to be a question. I guess it's always true with anyone who's an entrepreneur and who's taking risks. That's just the way it is. Donovan message retracted. All right. So, well, we're still waiting on Elon. When do I think? Okay, well, I think we're thinking he's going to be a half hour late, right? So we got another 15 minutes. So actually, if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to ask me the questions, because I've kind of contributed more than I thought I was going to at this point. I thought my contribution was going to be just commenting on what Elon was saying. And he hasn't said anything yet. So let's see. Oh boy. Well, like I said, my car has not had any issues. A lot of intellectual property theft. Is there a lot of intellectual property theft from Tesla? Well, it depends what you consider theft, because they did work with Toyota on the RAV4 EV before they launched the Model S. So they knew how to get into, they got inside the automotive manufacturing business because of that. Even though they were only developing the batteries and the motor for the car, they had to learn how the RAV4 was built, right? So what do I like besides Tesla? What car do I like the most? Well, I've got some groups. Actually, if you check, it's not on this one right now, but there will be. I'll put up in the description of this video, and there's a description of other videos, some groups I have on other EV companies such as NIO. If you look on, there's a NIO electric vehicle discussion. There's Rivian. It's another good one. I liked Rivian electric vehicle discussion. Although Rivian's taking a very, very different approach. They're not going with the efficient designs. Why am I heavily invested in Tesla? No, I am not an ex-employee. I'm someone that just recognizes how you can use technology, leverage technology to make your life more efficient. And I am an entrepreneur. So what do you think it'd be worth software? What was that? Oh, let's see. How much do you think it will be worth a software with level 5 autonomy? Do you think they'll license other companies? Maybe. Polestar, I'm not really a big fan of Polestar. They have their roots in an internal combustion company, Volvo, right? So anybody who's got people who have legacy internal combustion people on their team is questionable as far as I'm concerned. It was supposed to start at 1 o'clock. It was supposed to start about 20 minutes ago, Luca, but we're thinking another 10 minutes or so till it starts. We'll probably give them about a half hour being late. So yeah, I am just into this for my own self, my own lifestyle. That's why I call it the channel a digital nomad, because I'm constantly on the go, constantly using technology, leveraging technology in ways that is kind of like pushing the envelope of what's available, because that's just where things are going. And I don't like the old ways of doing things. It's boring, slow. I'm more interested in new possibilities, and of course the world is becoming smaller, and because of the fact that the world is becoming smaller, travel is becoming easier, this kind of digital technology, digital nomad lifestyle is going to be something more and more people will be doing, I think. Model under 20,000. Yeah, Apple's probably working on a car. I think so. When's the beginning? Probably another 10 minutes. Tesla, I think that Tesla will always, that's one good position Tesla's in, is they're pushing down the cost and they're making the cars and the vehicles as efficient as possible. Everybody else is coming into the EV space. I cannot say that about, except for the fact that companies might be located in China where labor is less. But of course, Tesla is building a China factory, so they're going to take advantage of those low labor costs in China as well. But in terms of the cars, I'd say Tesla has done, from the very beginning, they have wanted to make the cars as efficient as possible, which means lower cost of ownership. That's the big thing. People aren't really talking about that right now because any EV is cheaper to run than a gasoline or diesel vehicle, okay? But I think that Tesla is designing their cars for low cost of ownership and, of course, income. All right, if you consider the 500,000 plus cars on the road right now that Tesla has with 8 cameras, that's income, potential income for the drivers. The only question is how much is Tesla going to charge for that service? You know, any products and features with Elon's proposed? No, I mean I've always been involved and bought my car because I like what they said about the Tesla ride sharing and making money off your vehicle. Not only just making money, but not having to park it. Like when you go downtown, just send it out the stud, get some money, and have it pick you up when you're done. You know, that's the way to go. I think the way of the future. And so I everything that Tesla has proposed, I am for. All these systems are amazing. Euro Gigafactory, I don't know. Yeah, Elon Musk making a $25,000 Tesla. Yeah, getting back to that, because Tesla's making the cars as efficient as possible, lowest cost of ownership possible. They're also trying to lay off people, which I've done videos on this too. They're cutting the bottom 10% of the company on a regular basis, which is great business practice. It upsets and angers a lot of people, maybe you if you're watching this, but it's going to help the company. You get rid of the dead wood, okay? And it's going to help make things less and less expensive for the ultimate purchaser of the vehicle. And they need to do that. They need to stay ahead. They're doing the right things in my mind, okay? Most companies are afraid to do these things. And thankfully, Tesla is getting it right in a number of different levels, okay? And because they're getting it right on so many different levels, they have this huge, multi-year lead on everybody else right now, and that's what I'm concerned about. 20 minutes, yeah. I think another 10 minutes. I think probably about a half hour late starting is my guess. Oh, I'm seeing something now. Nope, that's not. It's just they're still not there. So that's what I think. I think that they've got a huge lead, and I hope they don't lose it, because that's the thing right now. People are thinking that, oh, all this competition is popping up, right? Anytime now, competition. It's going to crush Tesla. But most of the competition, if you look at the cars, yes, they're electric, but they don't have the advantages of efficient design, low cost of ownership. Elon always seems to do things late for some reason. They don't have the Tesla ride-sharing network to make money. They don't have the full autonomous capability or soon-to-be upgraded capability. So many things about the Tesla is very simple. And even though Consumer Reports, I know, got on Tesla's back because the Model X was way too complicated and over the top, it's still a very simple design from the driveline. Very, very simple. Renewable energy. Yeah, I think so. Elon's taking a poop. Yeah, he's got to get a little more regular with his diet. Elon's got to get plant-based as far as I'm concerned. Q1 results. Yeah, well, I think there's definitely been a decline in demand in the United States. They've fulfilled all the pre-orders. I think that's, even though they don't say it and we don't focus on that, I think that's what happened. So now they tried to move over to Europe and other countries, right? Shipping there, which is great, but it takes a while. There's a lag there. And of course, people don't want 4-doors in the United States anymore. Not 4-door sedans, not saloons, whatever you want to call them. They don't want them. That's just a fact. That's why GM and Ford are moving over to almost all truck companies. Tesla's got to get this Model Y out there as soon as possible. Model Y is going to be their vehicle, okay? Most of the sales, in my mind, are going to be Model Y going forward once they have it out, which is why I wanted to go to that unveiling last month, and I did, rather than wait for the Tesla pickup. I think the Tesla pickup's a good idea, but I don't think that pickups are necessarily, electric pickups are going to replace the full-size trucks of today anytime soon, because there's just too much of a cost barrier. And people like their premium trucks for personal use, but not from a work perspective. Okay, let's see. I see 10 new Model 3s. Yeah, they're all over the place. They're all over the place here, too, in the United States. The next unreleased vehicle for Tesla, well, it's the pickup truck. I think they're going to unveil the Tesla pickup next. What size it is, that's going to be a good question. Is it going to be like a mid-size pickup or a full-size? I don't know. I mean, I own a Toyota Tundra from 2000. When that came out, Toyota called that a full-size. You remember that? Electric motorcycle, maybe. Yeah, Toyota called the original 2000 Tundra a full-size truck, but it was like a 7/8 vehicle. Okay, I still have that one. And that's what I liked about it. It wasn't quite as big. But I wonder what Tesla's going to do. They may only have just one truck, like a new platform, somewhere in between the Model S platform and Model 3 platform that they've built the X and Y off of. It may be a totally new platform. I don't know. The T-Wagon 8-wheeler pickup. Yeah. Yeah, electric motorcycles are interesting too, but electric motorcycles, it would be much harder to make those self-driving. And I think that's what Tesla is into, is self-driving, right? How would you do a motorcycle self-driving? Because there's a whole balancing thing involved in that. I don't know. I don't think that's something that, maybe they're developing that, but I don't see that as something that Tesla's really going to be pushing forward. I think the whole motorcycle industry is shrinking dramatically. I think that as cars become so fast, like the Model 3 Performance is basically like a training wheel. So yeah, Model 3 Performance is like a go-kart, like a race go-kart, okay? With those cars that fast like that, why would you need a motorcycle? Why would you want a motorcycle? You're dead in a motorcycle if you wreck, like in almost every situation, save a miracle. In a Tesla, you know, which are like the safest cars in the world, it's like the exact opposite of that, okay? It is like pure safety. It's like as safe as you can get. Why would you want to? I mean, yes, Elon is very dangerous in the way he runs his company, but why would you want to start producing dangerous vehicles? I don't know. Bus market, yeah, but I mean, I think most buses already are hybrids. If you look around the United States, most urban bus routes, buses, flamethrowers, yeah, yeah, they're hybrids, so they got to get to full electric though. Everybody's got to get the full electric. I think we know that this is the future. And let's see. Yes, will Model S and X refresh the Model 3 interior? Yes, I made a video about that recently. It'll just be a bigger center screen that is in the landscape layout rather than the portrait layout. And it'll only be the one screen. You'll lose the second driver information screen in front of the steering wheel. But you know, as we move more and more towards autonomous, like Tesla's already predicted with the designs of their vehicles, the interior designs, you won't need that screen. I mean, you do now, and it's really nice. I'm sure Model 3 drivers wish they had something straight in front of them if they're piloting their own vehicle. I've never driven a Model 3, so I don't know. Faraday Future's dying, yeah, probably. But I think that Tesla is designing the interiors of all their vehicles to be full self-driving. As well as that camera that on the rear view mirrors up on the top on the windshield that faces the interior, so they can see what's going on in the interior of your car. I wish I had that in the Model X, because I do want to use my Model X as part of the Tesla rideshare program. And, you know, is Elon back is sharing for Tesla? He did. I think that he's not allowed to be, well, actually, that was chairman of the board, I think he had to back down from. So I don't know what exact chairman you're talking about. Really late today. Yeah. Actually, I might need to go get some water. I've been talking so long. I didn't expect to be talking this long continually. I expected to kind of, you know, say a few words here and there as Elon's doing his thing. But, yeah, I'll tell you what, can I even put this thing down here? You can go over with me. Maybe I can walk over and you guys can get a drink of water with me. Yeah, Rivian can fulfill their promise yeah, they'll have a great product, amazing product, I think, okay? The problem is it's going to be really expensive like other Teslas. It'll be, you know, people who are in the market for like a premium pickup truck that they're not using for work, you know, I'm gonna put it in a wine glass. How about that? They'll be interested in that, but I'd say nobody else. I don't think that Rivian's gonna be like replacing the Ford F-150 or Chevy CK, whatever they call them, Silverado. I think it's gonna be a while. I think it's still, the trucks, just like the cars, are kind of more a niche market until they can bring the cost down. And I think that Rivian may have problems with that, actually, the cost. Because I think at first the cost is going to be like prohibitive, you know, $70,000. Oh, they're still not on. Oh my gosh, they can get a glass of water and we're still not on. By the way, always drink pure water. Okay, this stuff, I don't have a water filtration system here, but if I did, I would use a reverse osmosis system. This I just buy at the store. I wish I didn't have to, but I'm very sensitive to things, and I can tell you tap water is not good to drink. This is what is it? Distilled water. Model 3 build quality. Well, I think that what Tesla has shown is, yeah, that is a big conch shell over there. We got that at Sanibel Island, Florida. That's where I got married. If you check my video back in December, I got married. And actually, it's my 2-year anniversary today with Denise. You see that? We met on the 22nd of April, 2017, and we already got married. Okay, build quality for Model 3. I think that it's okay. It's fine. Thanks. Thank you, Eric. it meets the needs of the consumer. The consumer is more interested these days in performance. They're more interested in the capability of the car. They're more interested in self-driving. I don't care if there's a little flaw in the paint. Okay. I probably care on mine because mine costs so much. But if you're paying $35,000-$40,000 for a car, yeah, it's almost perfect. I mean, so it's not perfect. I mean, the minute someone's gonna dent your car, you're gonna get a rock on it. You're gonna crack the windshield. So much is gonna happen to it. You know, people are still romancing their vehicles like they did in the past, right? And it's now 7. Yeah. Okay. Well, now a half hour late. Yeah. Where in the world? All right. You guys might just hear from me today. I can give you the full autonomy report. I think here's what Elon's going to say. They've got level 3 hardware in the cars. They've got level 3 computers being produced today. Anybody who bought full self-driving will get their upgrade to the model, the newest AP3 hardware, which is really just a new computer. And by the way, you can upgrade your old Tesla from 2012 Model S on. It won't include the old Roadsters to be autonomous full self-driving if you have the cameras installed and the new computer. There you go. Oh, and by the way, we can do all these fancy tricks that we're going to show you in our private parking lot with our cars with no drivers in them at a relatively low speed. But we're not going to go out on public roads unless we've closed one off and gotten permission from the local authorities because no one's going to be on there. That'll probably be it. And by the way, none of this is going to be available to you until regulatory approval, and I have no idea when that's going to be. But hopefully the government will get their act in gear, and if not, write your congressman and that kind of stuff. Oh, it is. Congratulations, James. A 24-hour live stream. Yeah. Oh, okay. I think it's on. Is this it? No, it's the same thing. Oh, same stuff. It's not coming on yet. I'm worried about my phone battery now. And by the way, almost all my videos, in case you were wondering, I do on this phone, which is a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. And this phone is amazing. It's not 5G. It's got everything I want except 5G, but I also did a video recently where I think that if you have a newer plan, like I have an older unlimited and non-throttled Verizon plan, I might be able to see 5G real speeds, upload and download, but most people are going to be severely limited. Most people are not going to notice a difference between 4G and 5G. The biggest thing they'll probably notice is the lack of latency, okay, which is what we need for full self-driving cars. So anyway, I do this, and by the way, I want to make another video soon because this phone is so loud. When you have the video up, audio, like outside, I'm talking outside in crowds, it is so loud. I've never heard such a loud phone. Usually with mobile phones, it's like you can't hear the thing. You got to put headset on or something, and even then, it's low quality. This thing it's just like a portable stereo. Yeah, last minute PowerPoint slides. The event's supposed to start any time. You know, anybody who's on the Tesla live stream, just tell them to come over here. Okay, we can talk about what's going on with Elon. Because Elon is obviously doing this on Elon time again. And he's not on time, but he's selling merchandise at Coachella. I'm glad to have some water. All right, so what else? I guess so that's really the biggest news at Tesla, I say, is going to be the refresh, opening of the China Gigafactory. That's going to lower costs. Getting that Model Y out. They got to get the Model Y out. Yeah, they prepare. But this footage has been looping for the last like hour and a half, 2 hours now. It's the same thing. If you watched it enough times, it actually gets kind of boring after a while. But anyway, here's another thing to talk about. There is this thing by invitation only, right? If you've paid for the full self-driving option, which Windows is up, yeah. If you paid for the full self-driving options like I have, you can get an invite to get like early releases of new Tesla software updates. But the catch is, according to Tesla and everything I've seen, you got to sign an agreement where it's like a non-disclosure agreement. You can't go on YouTube and talk about these things, which is basically all I ever do. So I don't know if I would be a good person to get that Tesla early thing. I think some of the Tesla early people may be the ones who are showing their cars going around parking lots with that granny mode, that enhanced summon. I don't know. Pickup truck's going to be on. When do I think realistically? Well, it depends what kind of chassis. If they're going to build it on the existing chassis, like either the Model 3 chassis or Model S, and the X and Y are built off of those chassis. then I would say that they could probably get to market probably before the end of next year, maybe even ahead of Rivian. You know, I think. But if they're building a totally new platform, I don't know. They need. I'd say they're going to have in the United States. They're going to have to be building those trucks at the Nevada Gigafactory for sure. Self-delivered to your door and your. Yeah, I think so. Am I gay? No, no. Definitely not. Okay, the self-driving things delivered to your door. When I ordered mine back in 2016, I just did the whole thing online. Okay, whole thing online. Did not go to a Tesla showroom. Did not call anybody. Just either emailed or went on their website, and that's how I did the whole transaction. If you go back and see some of my earlier videos, okay, that would be 2021 for pickup, 2025. Oh my gosh, Justin, I hope you're not right about that. I hope you're not right. But, well, if you are right, Elon's got a lot of people like me to shell out a lot of money way ahead of time for something that may not even happen in the life cycle of my own vehicle. You know, but you figure a vehicle lasts for 20 years. Come to your door after ordering online. I'm sure they can do that. Anything you can think, right? Science fiction is like pre-fiction, right? I mean, if you look at old science fiction books, they're doing all this stuff today already. Full autonomy at least 10 years away. Well, what makes you say that? To Mulam or whatever. What makes you say 10 years away? I've had people say that to me too, and usually they're in a competing industry, okay? Or are most aware of industries that are competing. What do you think? Because I think that anybody who's not in a competing industry wants this thing as soon as possible, and I think it's going to be a lot sooner than 10 years. I don't know. New platform, flipping out. Okay. You mean new platform for the truck, right? Okay. Yeah, you might be. Elon's on Twitter. What's he saying? What's Elon saying on Twitter? What's he saying about this broadcast? Not 10 years ago. Okay, good. Good to hear that. Glad to hear that. I think that there's so much momentum. It's just like your smartphones. They're not going to stop evolving. They're going to keep going as fast as they can. And no matter you can't buy a better smartphone with you can't spend $8,000 and get like the best smartphone ever. It doesn't exist. The technology is not there yet. 6 to 7 years. Okay. SpaceX. Yeah, they're doing a lot of launchings and landings nowadays, huh? All of a sudden they're coming out of nowhere. I think they're totally ramping that up. Oh, he hasn't said anything in the last hour on Twitter. Maybe this is just another publicity stunt, like sending out the Roadster into space. Maybe we're all watching the screen and there's a bunch of Tesla cars driving autonomously on the roads right now. I don't know. Or maybe I need to get in my car. Maybe he's made my car autonomous, like just for this event. I doubt it. The Earth is flat. Yeah, this is getting even for Elon time. Sprinting. Elon's late, you think? Could be. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my broadcast. I've been doing this live broadcast for 53 minutes now, which is why I need to go get my glass of water. You were flying your drone on the flat Earth? Yeah, this is way too long. All right, let me flip this camera around. Yeah, still the same looping video here. Gigafactory. House tour. Yeah, this is the smallest condo you'll ever see. It's like 900 square feet. There's nothing to see. You saw the kitchen. You got the house tour. Developments in automated driving are exponential, not linear. I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying there, James. Okay, no nastiness here if you can avoid it, please. I don't think they've ever been this late. Yeah, Model 3 or Model Y. Hold off on the Model Y. Everyone's going to want that. Trust me on that. I think Model 3 demand has already gone down to the detriment of Tesla. Too early. His developer build crashed on the way. All right. Yeah, we're still waiting. to neural net. Once it has learned, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Hey, but JM, I've also noticed if you look at some of my videos that the neural net has now gotten so smart where it realizes where there are some very, very difficult roads, which are some of the ones that I test on. If you look at the playlists I have for different tracks that I test on, and it has refused to turn the system on in some of the most difficult parts consistently now. It used to be like a fluke, and some of the earlier builds it would always turn it on. But now, hello Vladik, but now they lock it out. So it is getting smarter. The production are lagging behind. You think so? Okay. Outdated in looks before that. Yeah, you may be right. Where's the presentation? I don't know. I do not know. Yeah. Okay, he's on. Something's on. Okay, I'm seeing something now. Let me hit the volume.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry for being late. Welcome to our very first Analyst Day for Autonomy. I really hope that this is something we can do a little bit more regularly now to keep you posted about the development we're doing with regards to autonomous driving. About 3 months ago,
I think it's France.
We were getting prepped up for our Q4 earnings call with Elon and quite a few other executives. And one of the things that I told the group is that from all the conversations that I keep having with investors on a regular basis, the biggest gap that I see with what I see inside the company and what the outside perception is our ability of autonomous driving. And it kind of makes sense because for the past couple of years, we've been really talking about Model 3 ramp, and a lot of the debate has revolved around Model 3. But in reality, a lot of things have been happening in the background. We've been working on the new full self-driving chip. We've had a complete overhaul of our neural net for vision recognition, etc.
Yeah,
so
I can
now
tell you
that
about
we finally
that.
started
That's
to
for
produce
sure.
our full self-driving computer, we thought it's a good idea to just open the veil, invite everyone in, and talk about everything that we've been doing for the past 2 years. So about 3 years ago, we wanted to find the best possible chip for full autonomy. And we found out that there's no chip that's been designed from ground up for neural nets. So we invited my colleague Pete Bannon, the VP of Silicon Engineering, to design such chip for us. He's got about 35 years of experience of building chips and designing chips. About 12 of those years were for a company called PA Semi, which was later acquired by Apple. So he worked on dozens of different architectures and designs, and he was the lead designer, I think, for Apple iPhone 5 just before joining Tesla. And he's going to be joined on the stage by Elon Musk. Thank you.
Actually,
Oh, there he is.
I was going to introduce Pete, but one's done so.
Are they going to mention why they were late?
He's just the best chip and system architect that I know in the world, and it's an honor to have you and your team at Tesla. We'll take it away. Just tell them about the incredible work that you and your team have done.
Thanks, Elon. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and a real treat, really, to tell you about all the work that my colleagues and I have been doing here at Tesla for the last 3 years. I think we'll tell you a little bit about how the whole thing got started, and then I'll introduce you to the full self-driving computer and tell you a little bit about how it works. We'll dive into the chip itself and go through some of those details. I'll describe how the custom neural network accelerator that we designed works, and then I'll show you some results. And hopefully you'll all still be awake by then.
Yeah.
I was hired in February of 2016. I asked Elon if he was willing to spend all the money it takes to do full custom system design. And he said, well, are we going to win? And I said, well, yeah, of course. So he said, I'm in. And so that got us started. We hired a bunch of people and started thinking about what a custom design chip for full autonomy would look like. We spent 18 months doing the design, and in August of 2017, we released the design for manufacturing. We got it back in December, it powered up, and it actually worked very, very well on the first try. We made a few changes and released a B0 Rev in April of 2018. In July of 2018, the chip was qualified, and we started full production of production quality parts. In December of 2018, we had the autonomous driving stack running on the new hardware, and we were able to start retrofitting employee cars and testing the hardware and software out in the real world.
I would like to be doing that.
Just last March, we started shipping the new computer in the Model S and X, and just earlier in April, we started production in Model 3. So this whole program, from the hiring of the first few employees to having it in full production in all 3 of our cars, is just a little over 3 years, and is probably the fastest system development program I've ever been associated with, and it really speaks a lot to the advantages of having a tremendous amount of vertical integration to allow you to do concurrent engineering and speed up deployment. In terms of goals, we were totally focused exclusively on
Yeah, it
testing
might be,
requirements,
Justin.
and that makes life a lot easier. If you have one and only one customer, you don't have to worry about anything else. One of those goals was to keep the power under 100 watts so that we could retrofit the new machine into the existing cars.
Ah, there you go. That's what I was talking about.
We also wanted a lower part cost so we could enable full redundancy for safety. At the time, we had a thumb in the wind estimate that it would take at least 50 trillion operations a second of neural network performance to drive a car, and so we wanted to get at least that much, and really as much as we possibly could. Batch size is how many items you operate on at the same time. So for example, Google's TPU1 has a batch size of 256, and you have to wait around until you have 256 things to process before you can get started. We didn't want to do that, so we designed our machine with a batch size of 1. So as soon as an image shows up, we process it immediately to minimize latency, which maximizes safety.
Latency is a big issue, that's for sure. So I think we need 5G.
Processing. At the time, we were doing quite a lot of that, but we speculated that over time, the amount of processing on the GPU would decline as the neural networks got better and better, and that has actually come to pass. So we took a risk by putting a fairly modest GPU in the design, as you'll see, and that turned out to be a good bet. Security is super important. If you don't have a secure car, you can't have a safe car.
Don't get it hacked.
On security, and then of course safety. In terms of actually doing the chip design, as Elon alluded earlier, there was really no ground-up neural network accelerator in existence in 2016. Everybody out there was adding instructions to their CPU or GPU or DSP to make it better for inference, but nobody was really just doing it natively. So we set out to do that ourselves. And then for other components on the chip, we purchased industry standard IP for CPUs and GPUs. That allowed us to minimize the design time and also the risk to the program. Another thing that was a little unexpected when I first arrived was our ability to leverage existing teams at Tesla. Tesla had wonderful power supply design teams, signal integrity analysis, package design, system software, firmware, board designs, and a really good system validation program that we were able to take advantage of to accelerate this program. Here's what it looks like. Over there on the right, you see all the connectors for the video that comes in from the 8
This
cameras
thing
that are
goes
in
on
the car.
the passenger
You can
side,
see the 2 self-driving
under the
computers
windshield
in the
above
middle of
the
board,
dash,
and then on the left is the power supply and some control
above the
connections.
glove compartment.
And so I
in the
really
dash
love it when
there.
a solution is boiled down to its barest elements. You have video, computing, and power, and it's straightforward and simple. Here's the original hardware 2.5 enclosure that the computer went into, and we've been shipping for the last 2 years. Here's the new design for the FSD computer. It's basically the same, and that, of course, is driven by the constraints of having a retrofit program for the cars. I'd like to point out that this is actually a pretty small computer. It fits behind the glove box, between the glove box and the firewall in the car. It does not take up half your trunk. As I said earlier, there's 2 fully independent computers on the board. You can see them there highlighted in blue and green. To either side of the large SoC, you can see the DRAM chips that we use for storage, and then below left, you see the flash chips that represent the file system. So these are 2 independent computers that boot up and run their own operating system.
Yeah, if I can add something, I mean, the general principle here is that any part of this could fail, and the car will keep driving. So you could have cameras fail.
That's important. Very important. We were talking about that earlier.
Fail. You could have one of the Tesla full self-driving computer chips fail. Car keeps driving.
Very
the
important.
probability of this computer failing is substantially lower than somebody losing consciousness. That's the key metric, at least in order of magnitude.
Yep. So one of the things that additional thing we do to keep the machine going is to have redundant power supplies in the car. So one machine's running on one power supply and the other one's on the other. The cameras are the same, so half of the cameras run on the blue power supply, the other half run on the green power supply, and both chips receive all of the video and process it independently. So in terms of driving the car, the basic sequence is collect lots of information from the world around you. Not only do we have cameras, we also have radar, GPS, maps, the IMUs, ultrasonic sensors around the car.
They don't have LiDAR.
Vortex, steering angle. We know what the acceleration and deceleration of the car is supposed to be. All of that gets integrated together to form a plan. Once we have a plan, the two machines exchange their independent version of the plan to make sure it's the same. And assuming that we agree, we then act and drive the car. Now, once you've driven the car with some new control, you also want to validate it. So we validate that what we transmitted was what we intend to transmit to the other actuators in the car. And then you can use the sensor suite to make sure that it happens. So if you ask the car to accelerate or brake or steer right or left, you can look at the accelerometers and make sure that you are in fact doing that. So there's a tremendous amount of redundancy and overlap in both our data acquisition and our data monitoring capabilities here. Moving on to talk about the full self-driving chip a little bit. It's packaged in a 37.5 millimeter BGA with 1600 balls. Most of those are used for power and ground, but plenty for signal as well. If you take the lid off, it looks like this. You can see the package substrate, and you can see the die sitting in the center there. If you take the die off and flip it over, it looks like this. There's 13,000 C4 bumps scattered across the top of the die, and then underneath that are 12 metal layers, and which is obscuring all the details of the design. So if you strip that off, it looks like this. This is a 14 nanometer FinFET CMOS process. It's 260 millimeters in size, which is a modest sized die. So for comparison, a typical cell phone chip is about 100 millimeters square, so we're quite a bit bigger than that, but a high-end GPU would be more like 600 to 800 millimeters square. So we're sort of in the middle. I would call it the sweet spot. It's a comfortable size to build. There's 250 million logic gates on there and a total of 6 billion transistors, which even though I work on this all the time, that's mind-boggling to me. The chip is manufactured and tested to AEC Q100 standards, which is a standard automotive criteria.
Definitely mind-blowing.
Next, I'd like to just walk around the chip and explain all the different pieces to it. And I'm sort of going to go in the order that a pixel coming in from the camera would visit all the different pieces. So up there in the top left, you can see the camera serial interface. We can ingest 2.5 billion pixels per second, which is more than enough to cover all the sensors that we know about. We have an on-chip network that distributes data from the memory system. So the pixels would travel across the network to the memory controllers on the right and left edges of the chip. We use industry standard LPDDR4 memory running at 4,266 gigabits per second, which gives us a peak bandwidth of 68 gigabytes a second, which is a pretty healthy bandwidth, but again, this is not like ridiculous. So we're sort of trying to stay in the comfortable sweet spot for cost reasons.
Oh yeah, cost is going to be a big deal.
The image signal processor has a 24-bit internal pipeline that allows us to take full advantage of the HDR sensors that we have around the car. It does advanced tone mapping, which helps to bring out details and shadows. And then it has advanced noise reduction, which just improves the overall quality of the images that we're using in the neural network. The neural network accelerator itself, there's two of them on the chip. They each have 32 megabytes of SRAM to hold temporary results and minimize the amount of data that we have to transmit on and off the chip, which helps reduce power. Each array has a 96 by 96 multiply add array with in-place accumulation, which allows us to do almost 10,000 multiply adds per cycle. There's dedicated ReLU hardware, dedicated pooling hardware, and each of these deliver each one delivers 36 trillion operations per second, and they operate at 2 gigahertz. The two of them together on a die delivers 72 trillion operations a second. So we exceeded our goal of 50 teraops by a fair bit. There's also a video encoder. We encode video and use it in a variety of places in the car, including the backup camera display. There's optionally a user feature for dash cam and also for clip logging data to the cloud, which Stuart and Andre will talk about more later. There's a GPU on the chip. It's modest performance. It has support for both 32 and 16-bit floating point. And then we have 12 A72 64-bit CPUs for general purpose processing. They operate at 2.2 gigahertz, and this represents about 2.5 times the performance available in the current solution. There's a safety system that contains 2 CPUs that operate in lockstep. This system is the final arbiter of whether it's safe to actually drive the actuators in the car. So this is where the 2 plans come together, and we decide whether it's safe or not to move forward. And lastly, there's a safety system, and then basically the job of the safety system is to ensure that this chip only runs software that's been cryptographically signed by Tesla.
That's good.
If it's not been signed by Tesla, then the chip does not operate.
That would be bad. Hacking into someone's car.
Now, I've told you a lot of different performance numbers, and I thought it'd be helpful maybe to put it into perspective a little bit. So throughout this talk, I'm going to talk about a neural network from our narrow camera. It uses 35 billion operations, 35 gigaops. And if we use all 12 CPUs to process that network, we could do 1.5 frames per second, which is super slow, not nearly adequate to drive the car.
Right.
If we use the 600 gigaflop GPU, the same network, we'd get 17 frames per second, which is still not good enough to drive the car with 8 cameras. The neural network accelerators on the chip can deliver 2100 frames per second.
Nice.
And you can see from the scaling as we moved along that the amount of computing in the CPU and GPU are basically insignificant to what's available in the neural network accelerator. It really is night and day.
That's amazing.
So moving on to talk about the neural network accelerator. I'm just going to stop for some water.
Yeah, he needs water too.
On the left, there's a cartoon of a neural network. Just to give you an idea of what's going on. The data comes in at the top and visits each of the boxes, and the data flows along the arrows to the different boxes. The boxes are typically convolutions or deconvolutions with relus. The green boxes are pooling layers.
I can't.
And the important thing about this is that the data produced by one box is then consumed by the next box, and then you don't need it anymore. You can throw it away. So all of that temporary data that gets created and destroyed as you flow through the network, there's no need to store that off-chip in DRAM. So we keep all that data in SRAM, and I'll explain why that's super important in a few minutes. If you look over on the right side of this, you can see that in this network, of the 35 billion operations, almost all of them are convolution, which is based on dot products. The rest are deconvolution, also based on dot product. And then ReLU and pooling, which are relatively simple operations. So if you were designing some hardware, you'd clearly target doing dot products, which are based on multiply add, and really kill that. But imagine that you sped it up by a factor of 10,000. So 100% all of a sudden turns into 0.1%, 0.01%. And suddenly the ReLU and pooling operations are going to be quite significant. So our hardware design includes dedicated resources for processing ReLU and pooling as well. Now, this chip is operating in a thermally constrained environment, so we had to be very careful about how
this car's get hot in the summer.
We want to maximize the amount
and
of
cold in the
arithmetic we
winter.
can do. So we picked integer add. It's 9 times less energy than a corresponding floating point add. And we picked 8-bit by 8-bit integer multiply, which is significantly less power than other multiply operations and is probably enough accuracy to get good results. In terms of memory, we chose to use SRAM as much as possible, and you can see there that going off-chip to DRAM is approximately 100 times more expensive in terms of energy consumption than using local SRAM. So clearly, we want to use local SRAM as much as possible. In terms of control, this is data that was published in a paper by Mark Horowitz at ISSCC, where he sort of critiqued how much power it takes to execute a single instruction on a regular integer CPU. And you can see that the add operation is only 0.15% of the total power. All the rest of the power is control overhead and bookkeeping. So in our design, we sought to basically get rid of all that as much as possible, because what we're really interested in is arithmetic. So here's the design that we finished. You can see that it's dominated by the 32 megabytes of SRAM. There's big banks on the left and right and in the center bottom. And then all the computing is done in the upper middle. Every single clock, we read 256 bytes of activation data out of the SRAM array, 128 bytes of weight data out of the SRAM array, and we combine it in in a 96 by 96 mol add array, which performs 9,000 multiply adds per clock. At 2 gigahertz, that's a total of 36.8 teraops. Now, when we're done with the dot product, we unload the engine so that we shift the data out across a dedicated ReLU unit, optionally across a pooling unit, and then finally into a write buffer where all the results get aggregated up, and then we write out 128 bytes per cycle back into the SRAM. And this whole thing cycles along all the time continuously. So we're doing dot products while we're unloading previous results, doing pooling, and writing back into the memory. If you add it all up, at 2 gigahertz, you need 1 terabyte per second of SRAM bandwidth to support all that work, and so the hardware supplies that. So 1 terabyte per second of bandwidth per engine. There's 2 on the chip, 2 terabytes per second. The accelerator has a relatively small instruction set. We have a DMA read operation to bring data in from memory. We have a DMA write operation to push results back out to memory. We have 3 dot product-based instructions: convolution, deconvolution, and inner product. And then 2 relatively simple scale is a 1 input, 1 output operation, and outwise is 2 inputs and 1 output. And then, of course, stop when you're done. We had to develop a neural network compiler for this. So we take the neural network that's been trained by our vision team as it would be deployed in the older cars, and we take that and compile it for use on the new accelerator. The compiler does layer fusion, which allows us to maximize the computing each time we read data out of the SRAM and put it back. It also does some smoothing so that the demands on the memory system aren't too lumpy. And then we also do channel padding to reduce bank conflicts, and we do bank-aware SRAM allocation. And this is a case where we could have put more hardware in the design to handle bank conflicts, but by pushing it into software, we save hardware and power at the cost of some software complexity.
It's not going to be as accurate either, but probably not needed.
Into the graph so that data arrives just in time for computing without having to stall the machine. And then at the end, we generate all the code. We generate all the weight data, we compress it, and we add a CRC checksum for reliability. To run a program, all the neural network descriptions programs are loaded into SRAM at the start, and then they sit there ready to go all the time. So to run a network, you have to program the address of the input buffer, which presumably is a new image that just arrived from a camera. You set the output buffer address, you set the pointer to the network weights, and then you set go. And then the machine goes off and will sequence through the entire neural network all by itself, usually running for 1 million or 2 million cycles. And then when it's done, you get an interrupt and can post-process the results. So moving on to results. We had a goal to stay under 100 watts. This is measured data from cars driving around running the full autopilot stack. We're dissipating 72 watts, which is a little bit more power.
It is going to affect battery consumption.
But with the dramatic improvement in performance, it's still a pretty good answer. Of that 72 watts, about 15 watts is being consumed running the neural networks. In terms of cost, the silicon cost of this solution is about 80% of what we were paying before. So we are saving money by switching to this solution. And in terms of performance, we took the narrow camera neural network, which I've been talking about, that has 35 billion operations in it. We ran it on the old hardware in a loop as quick as possible, and we delivered 110 frames per second. We took the same data, the same network, compiled it for hardware for the new FSD computer, and using all 4 accelerators, we can get 2,300 frames per second processed. So a factor of 21.
Yeah.
I think this
You
is
need that
perhaps the most
reaction.
significant slide.
Reaction time.
It's night and day.
Because that's what I've noticed. The reaction time is bad on my old computer.
More than 3. So this was pretty fun. If you compare it to, say, NVIDIA's Drive Xavier solution, a single chip delivers 21 teraops. Our full self-driving computer with 2 chips is 144 teraops.
That's amazing. Is the stock value going up?
So to conclude, I think we've created a design that delivers outstanding performance, 144 teraops for neural network processing. It has outstanding power performance. We managed to jam all of that performance into the thermal budget that we had. It enables a fully redundant computing solution. It has a modest cost. And really the important thing is that this FSD computer will enable a new level of safety and autonomy in Tesla's vehicles without impacting their cost or range. Something that I think we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, I think when we do Q&A after each segment, so if people have questions about the hardware, they can ask right now. The reason I asked Pete to do just a detailed, far more detailed than perhaps most people would appreciate, dive into the Tesla full self-driving computer is because at first it seems improbable. How could it be that Tesla, who has never designed a chip before, would design the best chip in the world? But that is objectively what has occurred. Not best by a small margin, best by a huge margin. It's in the cars right now. All Teslas being produced right now have this computer. We switched over from the NVIDIA solution for S and X about a month ago, and we switched over Model 3 about 10 days ago. All cars being produced have all the hardware necessary, compute and otherwise, for full self-driving.
Yeah, you're right. Yep, well,
I'll say that again.
I think we knew
All
this.
Tesla
This is
cars
not new.
produced right now
I've been making
have
videos about this
everything
over the last week
necessary
or two.
for full self-driving. All you need to do is improve the software. And later today, you will drive the cars with the development version of the improved software, and you will see for yourselves. Questions for Pete?
Yep.
Very impressive. I appreciate that. Questions. I saw some of the
I wonder what it took to get an
Global
invite
Equities
to this.
Research. Very, very impressive in every shape and form. I was wondering, like I took some notes. You are using activation function, ReLU, the rectified linear unit. But if we think about the deep neural network, it has multiple layers, and some algorithms may use different activation functions for different hidden layers, like softmax or tanh. Do you have flexibility for incorporating different activation functions rather than LU in your platform? Then I have a follow-up.
Yes, we do. We have implementations of tanh and sigmoid, for example.
Beautiful. One last
Yeah,
question.
they did.
Like in the nanometers, you mentioned 14 nanometers as a. I was wondering, wouldn't it make sense to come a little lower, maybe 10 nanometers 2 years down, or maybe 7?
At the time we started the design, not all the IP that we wanted to purchase was available in 10 nanometer. We finished the design in 14.
It's maybe worth pointing out that we finished this design like maybe 1.5, 2 years ago and began design of the next generation. We're not talking about the next generation today, but we're about halfway through it. That will, all the things that are obvious for next generation.
That's why they're letting people know now about this. They want to keep their lead.
Yep.
I wonder what it took to get an invite to this.
You talked about
Actually be there.
the software is the piece now. You did a great job. I was blown away. Understood 10% of what you said, but I trust that it's in good hands.
Thanks.
So it feels like you got the hardware piece is done, and that was really hard to do. And now you have to do the software piece. Now maybe that's outside of your expertise, but how should we think about that software piece?
Well, can ask for a better introduction to Andre and Stuart.
I think, yeah.
Are there any questions for the chip part before? The next part of the presentation is neural nets and software.
So maybe on the chip side, the last slide was 144 trillions of operations per second versus, was it NVIDIA at 21?
That's right.
And maybe can you just contextualize that for a finance person, why that's so significant, that gap? Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's a factor of 7 in performance delta, so that means you can do 7 times as many frames. You can run neural networks that are 7 times larger and more sophisticated. So it's a very big currency that you can spend on lots of interesting things to make the car better.
I think that Xavier power usage is higher than ours. Xavier power is higher than ours, or comparable.
Don't know that.
I believe it's like the at the best of my knowledge, the power requirements would increase at least to the same degree, a factor of 7, and costs would also increase by a factor of 7. Yeah.
Great. Should we?
Power is a real problem because it also reduces range. So it has the penalty for power is very high.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely
then
reduces
you have to
range.
get rid of that power by the thermal problem becomes really significant because you got to get rid of all that power. So.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of quite a bit of.
Just ask the questions. Sure. If you guys don't mind the day running a bit long, we're
Yeah,
going to
probably other car makers are probably like 5 years out.
If anybody needs to pop out and do drive demos a little sooner, you're welcome to do that. But I do want to make sure we answer your questions.
Yep.
Pradeep Ramani from UBS. Intel and AMD to some extent have started moving towards a chiplet-based architecture. I did not notice a chiplet-based design here. Do you think that looking forward, that would be something that might be of interest to you guys from an architecture standpoint?
A chiplet-based architecture?
Yes.
We're not currently considering anything like that. I think that's mostly useful when you need to use different styles of technology. So if you want to integrate silicon germanium or DRAM technology on the same silicon substrate, that gets pretty interesting. But until the die size gets obnoxious, I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, to be clear, like the strategy here, and this started basically a little over 3 years ago, was design and build a computer that is fully optimized and aiming for full self-driving, then write software that is designed to work specifically on that computer and get the most out of that computer. So you have tailored hardware that is a master of one trade, self-driving.
That's what you need.
NVIDIA is a great company, but they have many customers. And so
That's true.
As they apply their resources, they need to do a generalized solution. We care about one thing, self-driving. So that it was designed to do that incredibly well. The software is also designed to run on that hardware incredibly well. And the combination of the software and the hardware, I think, is unbeatable.
Tesla's way advanced just with the software alone. Way more advanced than other auto manufacturers. Now they get the hardware.
The chip is designed to process video input. In case you use, let's say, LiDAR, would it be able to process that as well, or is it
Here's a LiDAR question.
primarily for video?
What we're going to explain to you today is that LiDAR is a fool's errand. And anyone relying on LiDAR is doomed.
There you go.
Doomed.
Doomed.
Expensive sensors
They look ugly.
that are unnecessary.
They ruin
It's
the looks of the
having
car.
A whole bunch of expensive appendices. Like one appendix is bad. Well, now we're put a whole bunch of them. That's ridiculous. You'll see.
Hi.
We'll see.
Hi. So just two questions on the power.
He is a boss.
consumption. Is there a way to maybe give us like a rule of thumb on, every watt reduces range by a certain percent or a certain amount, just so we can get a sense of how much of an improvement?
Well, Elon was
Model
correct.
3,
I was giving Elon the benefit of the doubt, but thank you, Donovan.
150 watts per mile.
Is it 150 watts per mile? Is that what he said?
It depends on the nature of the driving as to how many miles that affects. In city, it would have a much bigger effect than on highway.
Yeah, I would think so. It's got to work harder in the city.
If you're driving for an hour in a city, and you had a solution hypothetically that was a kilowatt, you'd lose 4 miles.
City mileage will be less,
Model
that's for
3.
sure, with self-driving.
So if you're only going, say, 12 miles an hour, then that would be a 25% impact on range in city. It's basically power is a
25% impact in range?
The power of the system has a massive impact on city range.
That's pretty
which
big,
is where
yeah.
I think most of the robo-taxi market will be.
Wow.
So power
Need a
is
lot of
extremely important.
superchargers. Close by superchargers. I didn't realize it was 25%. That's pretty big. What do you guys think about that? 25% of range when on full self-driving in the city?
Sorry, thank you. What's the primary design objective of the next generation chip?
We don't want to talk too much about the next generation chip, but
I don't want to talk about it. Don't talk at all.
It'll be at least, let's say, 3 times better than the current system.
Go ahead.
It's about 2 years away.
I don't think I'm gonna get an upgrade to that one unless I pay for
Is
it.
the chip being you don't manufacture the chip, you contract that out, and how much cost reduction does that save in the overall vehicle cost?
The 20% cost reduction I cited was the piece cost per vehicle reduction. Not that wasn't a development cost, that was just the actual.
No, I'm saying, but like if I'm manufacturing these in mass, is this saving money in doing it yourself?
Yes, a little bit.
I mean, most chips are made for, most people don't make chips with their own fab. It's pretty unusual.
I think
You don't see any supply issues with getting the chip mass produced?
the cost saving pays for the development. I mean, the basic strategy going to Elon was, we're going to build this chip, it's going to reduce the cost. And Elon said, times 1 million cars a year, deal.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
That's correct.
Yes. Sorry.
If there are really chip-specific questions, we can answer them. Otherwise, there will be a Q&A opportunity after Andre talks and after Stuart talks. So there will be 2 other Q&A opportunities. This is, if it's very chip-specific, then...
Also, I'll be here all afternoon. So.
Yeah, and exactly, and Pete will be here at the end as well. So, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? Thanks. That die photo you had, there's the neural processor takes up quite a bit of the die. I'm curious, is that your own design, or is there some external IP there?
Yes, that was a custom design by Tesla.
Okay, and then I guess the follow-on would be, there's probably a fair amount of opportunity to reduce that footprint as you tweak the design?
It's actually quite dense.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty small.
In terms of reducing it, I don't think
already.
so, but will greatly enhance the
I'm not sure why you want smaller.
capabilities in the next generation.
Okay, and then last question, can you share where your
That's
battery
true
is
stuff.
part?
What?
Where are we fabbing it?
Oh, it's Samsung.
Samsung?
Yes, Austin, Texas.
Thank you.
One at the back.
Well, Elon's always nervous too, so he gets it from Elon.
Just curious how defensible your chip technologies and design is from a IP point of view, and hoping that you won't be offering a lot of the IP to the outside for free. Thanks.
We have filed on the order of 12 patents on this technology. Fundamentally, it's linear algebra, which I don't think you can patent. I'm not sure, but
I think if somebody started today and they were really good, they might have something like what we have right now in 3 years. But in 2 years, we'll have something 3 times better.
Yeah, it's good. They got to keep up. Don't rest on your laurels. That is so important with Tesla right now. They've got to keep ahead.
Talking about the intellectual property protection, you have the best intellectual property, and some people just steal it for the fun of it. I was wondering, if we look at few interactions with Aurora that companies took, the industry believes they stole your intellectual property. I think the key ingredient that you need to protect is the weights that you associate to various parameters. Do you think your chip can do something to prevent anybody, maybe encrypt all the weights so that even you don't know what the weights are at the chip level, so that your intellectual property remains inside it and nobody knows about it and nobody can just steal it?
Man, I'd like to meet the person that could do that, because I would have it in a heartbeat. Yeah, so that'd be a hard problem. Yeah, do you want to? I mean, we do encrypt it's a hard chip to crack. So if they can crack it, it's very good. If they can then crack it and then also figure out the software and the neural net system and everything else, they can design it from scratch. Like that's a.
It's our intention to prevent people from stealing all that stuff, and if they do, we hope it at least takes a long time.
It will definitely take them a long time. Yeah. I mean, it's not like if it was our goal to do that, how would we do it? It'd be very difficult. But the thing that's, I think, a very powerful, sustainable advantage for us is the fleet. Nobody has the fleet.
500,000 plus
cars. Constantly being updated and improved based on billions of miles driven. Tesla has 100 times more cars with the full self-driving hardware than everyone else combined. We have, by the end of this quarter, we'll have 500,000 cars with the full 8 camera setup, 12 ultrasonics.
And I drive 94,000 miles in 2 years.
Hardware too, but we still have the data gathering ability. And
continuous
then a year from now, we'll have over 1 million cars with full self-driving computer, hardware, everything. Yeah.
So we have Andre.
It's just a massive data advantage. It's similar to how the Google search engine has a massive advantage because people use it.
Right.
And people are programming.
And I use my Tesla.
Google with their queries and their results.
Yes.
May I just press you on that, and please reframe the question because I'm a tech layman if it's appropriate. But when we talk to Waymo or NVIDIA, they do speak with equivalent conviction about their leadership because of their competence in simulating miles driven. Can you talk about the advantage of having real world miles versus simulated miles? Because I think they expressed that by the time you get 1 million miles, they can simulate 1 billion. And no Formula One race car driver, for example, could ever successfully complete a real-world track without driving in a simulator. Can you talk about the advantages it sounds like that you perceive to have associated with having data ingestion coming from real-world miles versus simulated miles?
Great question.
Absolutely. The simulator, we have quite a good simulation too, but it does not capture the long tail of weird things that happen in the real world. If the simulation fully captured the real world, well, I mean, that would be proof that we're living in a simulation, I think. It doesn't. I wish. But simulations do not capture the real world. The real world's really weird and messy. You need the cars on the road. We're actually going to get into that in Andre and Stuart's presentation. So, okay, why don't we move on to Andre?
Great, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right, good job. You got software up next, I think? That was hardware?
The last question was actually a very good segue, because one thing to remember about our FSD computer is that it can run much more complex neural nets for much more precise image recognition. And to talk to you about how we actually get that image data and how we analyze them, we have our Senior Director of AI, Andre Karpati, who's going to explain all of that to you. Andre has a PhD from Stanford University, where he studied computer science, focusing on vision recognition and deep learning.
Andre, why don't you just do your own intro? Exactly. There's a lot of PhDs from Stanford. That's not important. Yes. We don't care.
Come on. Thank you.
Andre started the computer vision class at Stanford. That's much more significant. That's what matters. So, can you please talk about your background in a way that is not bashful? Just tell me about the stuff you've done. Yeah, and then.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I've been training neural networks basically for what is now a decade, and these neural networks were not actually really used in the industry until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So it's been some time that I've been training these neural networks, and that included institutions at Stanford, at OpenAI, at Google. And really just training a lot of neural networks, not just for images, but also for natural language, and designing architectures that couple those two modalities for my PhD.
And the computer science class.
Oh yeah, and at Stanford I actually taught the convolutional neural networks class, and so I was the primary instructor for that class. I actually started the course and designed the entire curriculum. So in the beginning it was about 150 students, and then it grew to 700 students over the next 2 or 3 years. So it's a very popular class. It's one of the largest classes at Stanford right now. So that was also really successful.
I mean, Andre is like really one of the best computer vision people in the world, arguably the best.
He does talk fast.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably a good thing.
So, hello everyone. So Pete told you all about the chip that we've designed that runs neural networks in the car. My team is responsible for training of these neural networks, and that includes all of data collection from the fleet, neural network training, and then some of the deployment onto that chip. So what do the neural networks do exactly in the car? So what we are seeing here is a stream of videos from across the vehicle, across the car. These are 8 cameras that send us videos, and then these neural networks are looking at those videos and are processing them and making predictions about what they're seeing. And so some of the things that we're interested in and some of the things you're seeing on this visualization here are lane line markings, other objects, the distances to those objects, what we call drivable space, shown in blue, which is where the car is allowed to go, and a lot of other predictions like traffic lights, traffic signs, and so on. Now, for my talk, I will talk roughly in 3 stages. So first, I'm going to give you a short primer on neural networks and how they work and how they're trained. And I need to do this because I need to explain in the second part why it is such a big deal that we have the fleet and why it's so important and why it's a key enabling factor to really training these neural networks and making them work effectively on the roads.
Fleet, yeah.
And in the third stage, I'll talk about vision and LiDAR and how we can estimate depth just from vision alone. So the core problem that these networks are solving in the car is that of visual recognition. So for you and I, this is a very simple problem. You can look at all of these 4 images and you can see that they contain a cello, a boat, an iguana, or scissors. So this is very simple and effortless for us. This is not the case for computers. And the reason for that is that these images are, to a computer, really just a massive grid of pixels. And at each pixel, you have the brightness value at that point. And so instead of just seeing an image, a computer really gets a million numbers in a grid that tell you the brightness values at all the positions.
The matrix, if you will. It really is the matrix.
Yeah. And so we have to go from that grid of pixels and brightness values into high-level concepts like iguana and so on. And as you might imagine, this iguana has a certain pattern of brightness values, but iguanas actually can take on many appearances. So they can be in many different appearances, different poses, and different brightness conditions against different backgrounds. You can have different crops of that iguana. And so we have to be robust across all those conditions, and we have to understand that all those different brightness patterns actually correspond to iguanas. Now, the reason you and I are very good at this is because we have a massive neural network inside our heads that is processing those images. So light hits the retina, travels to the back of your brain to the visual cortex, and the visual cortex consists of many neurons that are wired together and that are doing all the pattern recognition on top of those images. And really, over the last, I would say about 5 years, the state-of-the-art approaches to processing images using computers have also started to use neural networks, but in this case, artificial neural networks. But these artificial neural networks, and this is just a cartoon diagram of it, are a very rough mathematical approximation to your visual cortex. We really do have neurons, and they are connected together. And here I'm only showing 3 or 4 neurons in 4 layers. But a typical neural network will have tens to hundreds of millions of neurons, and each neuron will have 1,000 connections. So these are really large pieces of almost simulated tissue. And then what we can do is we can take those neural networks and we can show them images. So for example, I can feed my iguana into this neural network, and the network will make predictions about what it's seeing. Now, in the beginning, these neural networks are initialized completely randomly. So the connection strengths between all those different neurons are completely random. And therefore, the predictions of that network are also going to be completely random. So it might think that you're actually looking at a boat right now, and it's very unlikely that this is actually an iguana. And during the training process, really what we're doing is we know that that's actually an iguana. We have a label. So what we're doing is we're basically saying we'd like the probability of iguana to be larger for this image and the probability of all the other things to go down.
This is like the shadow, running in shadow mode.
Process called backpropagation and stochastic gradient descent that allows us to backpropagate that signal through those connections and update every one of those connections.
That's what Tesla's been doing.
Every one of those connections just a little amount.
With their data from the cars.
Once the update is complete, the probability of iguana for this image will go up a little bit, so it might become 14%, and the probability of the other things will go down. And of course, we don't just do this for this single image. We actually have entire large data sets that are labeled. So we have lots of images. Typically, you might have millions of images, thousands of labels, or something like that. And you are doing forward-backward passes over and over again. So you're showing the computer, here's an image, it has an opinion, and then you're saying this is the correct answer, and it tunes itself a little bit. You repeat this millions of times. And sometimes you show images, the same image to the computer, hundreds of times as well. So the network training typically will take on the order of a few hours or a few days, depending on how big of a network you're training. And that's the process of training a neural network. Now, there's something very unintuitive about the way neural networks work that I have to really get into, and that is that they really do require a lot of these examples, and they really do start from scratch. They know nothing, and it's really hard to wrap your head around this. So as an example, here's a cute dog, and you probably may not know the breed of this dog, but the correct answer is that this is a Japanese Spaniel. Now, all of us are looking at this, and we're seeing Japanese Spaniel, and we're like, okay, I got it. I understand kind of what this Japanese Spaniel looks like. And if I show you a few more images of other dogs, you can probably pick out other Japanese Spaniels here. So in particular, those three look like a Japanese Spaniel, and the other ones do not. So you can do this very quickly, and you need one example, but computers do not work like this. They actually need a ton of data of Japanese Spaniels. So this is a grid of Japanese Spaniels, showing them, you need thousands of examples, showing them in different poses, different brightness conditions, different backgrounds, different crops. You really need to teach the computer from all the different angles what this Japanese Spaniel looks like, and it really requires all that data to get that to work. Otherwise, the computer can't pick up on that pattern automatically. So what does all this imply about the setting of self-driving? Of course, we don't care about dog breeds too much. Maybe we will at some point. But for now, we really care about lane line markings, objects, where they are, where we can drive, and so on. So the way we do this is we don't have labels like iguana for images, but we do have images from the fleet like this, and we're interested in, for example, lane line markings. So
if there are lane markings,
goes into an image, and using a mouse annotates the lane line markings. So here's an example of an annotation that a human could create, a label for this image, and it's saying that that's what you should be seeing in this image. These are the lane line markings. And then what we can do is we can go to the fleet and we can ask for more images from the fleet. And if you ask the fleet, if you just do a naive job of this and you just ask for images at random, the fleet might respond with images like this, typically going forward on some highway. This is what you might just get, like a random collection like this. And we would annotate all that data. Now, if you're not careful and you only annotate a random distribution of this data, your network will kind of pick up on this, this random distribution of data and work only in that regime. So if you show it a slightly different example, for example, here is an image that actually the road is curving and it is a bit of a more residential neighborhood. Then if you show the neural network this image, that network might make a prediction that is incorrect. It might say that, okay, well, I've seen lots of times on highways, lanes just go forward, so here's a possible prediction. And of course, this is very incorrect. But the neural network really can't be blamed. It does not know that the tree on the left, whether or not it matters or not. It does not know if the car on the right matters or not towards the lane line. It does not know that the buildings in the background matter or not. It really starts completely from scratch. And you and I know that the truth is that none of those things matter. What actually matters is that there are a few white lane line markings over there in the vanishing point, and the fact that they curl a little bit should pull the prediction. Except there's no mechanism by which we can just tell the neural network, hey, those lane line markings actually matter. The only tool in the toolbox that we have is labeled data. So what we do is we need to take images like this when the network fails, and we need to label them correctly. So in this case, we will turn the lane to the right. And then we need to feed lots of images of this to the neural net. And neural net over time will basically pick up on this pattern that those things there don't matter, but those lane line markings do, and we'll learn to predict the correct lane. So what's really critical is not just the scale of the data set. We don't just want millions of images. We actually need to do a really good job of covering the possible space of things that the car might encounter on the roads. So we need to teach the computer how to handle scenarios where it's night and wet. You have all these different specular reflections, and as you might imagine, the brightness patterns in these images will look very different. We have to teach the computer how to deal with shadows, how to deal with forks in the road, how to deal with large objects that might be taking up most of that image, how to deal with tunnels, or how to deal with construction sites. And in all these cases, there's no, again, explicit mechanism to tell the network what to do. We only have massive amounts of data. We want to source all those images, and we want to annotate the correct lines, and the network will pick up on the patterns of those. Now, large and varied data sets basically make these networks work very well. This is not just a finding for us here at Tesla. This is a ubiquitous finding across the entire industry. So experiments and research from
Tesla has the largest data set.
From Baidu, from Alphabet's DeepMind, all show similar plots where neural networks really love data and love scale and variety. As you add more data, these neural networks start to work better and get higher accuracies for free. So more data just makes them work better. Now, a number of people have kind of pointed out that potentially we could use simulation to actually achieve the scale of the data sets, and we're in charge of a lot of the conditions here, and maybe we can achieve some variety in the simulator. Now, at Tesla, and that was also kind of brought up in the questions just before this. Now, at Tesla, this is actually a screenshot of our own simulator. We use simulation extensively. We use it to develop and evaluate the software. We've also even used it for training, quite successfully so. But really, when it comes to training data for neural networks, there really is no substitute for real data. The simulations have a lot of trouble with modeling appearance, physics, and
Yeah,
the
I agree with
behaviors of
that.
all the agents around you. So there are some examples to really drive that point across.
As long as
The
you can
real
get
world
enough
really
data,
throws a lot of
which
crazy
Tesla
stuff at
can.
you. So in this case, for example, we have very complicated environments
Look at
with
that.
snow, with trees, with wind. We have various visual artifacts that are hard to simulate potentially.
Cars in
We have complicated construction
area.
sites, bushes, and plastic bags that can go in, that can
Oh yeah, stuff on the road.
kind of go around with
Definitely
the
had
wind.
issues with that.
Complicated construction sites that might feature lots of people, kids,
Whoa.
animals, all mixed in, and simulating how those things interact and flow through this construction zone might actually be completely intractable. It's not about the movement of any one pedestrian in
On
there.
a bike.
It's about how they respond to each other and how those cars
Animal.
respond to each other and how they
Camel on
respond
the
to
road.
you driving in that setting. And all of those are actually really tricky to simulate. It's almost like you have to solve the self-driving problem to just simulate other cars in your simulation. So it's really complicated. So we have dogs, exotic animals, and in some cases, it's not even that you can't simulate it, it's that you can't even come up with it.
Yeah.
So for example, I didn't know that you can have truck on truck on truck like that, but in the real world, you find this, and you find lots of other things that are very hard to really even come up with. So really, the variety that I'm seeing in the data coming from the fleet is just crazy with respect to what we have in the simulator. We have a really good simulator.
Yeah, I mean, I think like simulation, you're fundamentally grading your own homework.
So
If you know that you're going to simulate it, okay, you can definitely solve for it. But as Andre is saying, you don't know what you don't know. The world is very weird and has millions of corner cases. And if somebody can produce a self-driving simulation that accurately matches reality, that in itself would be a monumental achievement of human capability. They can't. There's no way.
So I think the 3 points that I really
this is
tried
why
to drive
good drivers have
home until
lower
now
insurance
are,
rates.
To get neural networks to
Because
work
it's
well,
difficult.
they require these 3 essentials. They require a large data set, a varied data set, and a real data set. And if you have those capabilities, you can actually train neural networks and make them work very well. And so why is Tesla in such a unique and interesting position to really get all these 3 essentials right? And the answer to that, of course, is the fleet. We can really source data from it and make our neural network systems work extremely
Oh, look at
well.
that. That's where I am,
So
over
let me
on
take you
East
through a
Coast
concrete
US.
example of, for example, making the object detector work better, to give you a sense of how we develop these neural networks, how we iterate on them, and how we actually get them to work over time. So object detection is something we care a lot about. We'd like to put bounding boxes around, say, the cars and the objects here, because we need to track them and we need to understand how they might move around. So again, we might ask human annotators to give us some annotations for these, and humans might go in and might tell you that, okay, those patterns over there are cars and bicycles and so on. And you can train your neural network on this, but if you're not careful, the neural network will make mispredictions in some cases. So as an example, if we stumble by a car like this that has a bike on the back of it, then the neural network actually, when I joined, would actually create 2 detections. It would create a car detection and a bicycle detection. And that's actually kind of correct because I guess both of those objects actually exist. But for the purposes of the controller and the planner downstream, you really don't want to deal with the fact that this bicycle can go with the car. The truth is that that bike is attached to that car. So in terms of like just objects on the road, there's a single object, a single car. And so what you'd like to do now is you'd like to just potentially annotate lots of those images as this is just a single car. So the process that we go through internally in the team is that we take this image or a few images that show this pattern, and we have a mechanism, a machine learning mechanism by which we can ask the fleet to source us examples that look like that. And the fleet might respond with images that contains those patterns. So as an example, these 6 images might come from the fleet. They all contain bikes on backs of cars. And we would go in and we would annotate all those as just a single car. And then the performance of that detector actually improves. And the network internally understands that, hey, when the bike is just attached to the car, that's actually just a single car. And it can learn that given enough examples. And that's how we sort of fix that problem. I will mention that I talk quite a bit about sourcing data from the fleet. I just want to make a quick point that we've designed this from the beginning with privacy in mind, and all the data that we use for training is anonymized. Now, the fleet doesn't just respond with bicycles on backs of cars. We look for we look for lots of things all the time. So, for example, we look for boats, and the fleet can respond with boats. We look for construction sites, and the fleet can send us lots of construction sites from across the world. We look for even slightly more rare cases. So, for example, finding debris on the road.
Oh
It's
yeah,
pretty important to
that's
us.
a tough one.
So these are examples of
Very
images that
tough.
have streamed to us from the fleet that show tires.
It's probably mine.
cones,
This is
plastic
probably me,
bags, and
right
things like
there.
that. If we can source these at scale, we can annotate them correctly.
I've had
and
so
the neural
many of
network can
those.
learn how to deal with them in the world. Here's another example. Animals, of course, also a very rare occurrence, an event, but we want the neural network to really understand what's going on here, that these are animals, and we want to deal with that correctly. So to summarize, the process by which we iterate on neural network predictions looks something like this. We start with a seed data set that was potentially sourced at random. We annotate that data set, and then we train neural networks on that data set and put that in the car. And then we have mechanisms by which we notice inaccuracies in the car when this detector may be misbehaving. So for example, if we detect that the neural network might be uncertain, or if we detect that, or if there's a driver intervention on any of those settings, we can create this trigger infrastructure that sends us data of those inaccuracies. And so for example, if we don't perform very well on lane line detection on tunnels, then we can notice that there's a problem in tunnels. That image would enter our unit tests, so we can verify that we're actually fixing the problem over time. But now what you do is to fix this inaccuracy, you need to source many more examples that look like that. So we ask the fleet to please send us many more tunnels, and then we label all those tunnels correctly. We incorporate that into the training set, and we retrain the network, redeploy, and iterate the cycle over and over again.
And
improve.
improve.
We refer to this iterative process by which we improve these predictions as the data engine. So iteratively deploying something, potentially in shadow mode, sourcing.
Yeah, in shadow mode, that's what it is. This is all happening in your car if you're driving a Tesla with AP2 or greater.
Now, so far, I've talked about a lot of explicit labeling. So, like I mentioned, we ask people to annotate data. This is an expensive process in time, and also with respect to, it's just an expensive process. And so these annotations, of course, can be very expensive to achieve. So what I want to talk about also is really to utilize the power of the fleet. You don't want to go through this human annotation bottleneck. You want to just stream in data and automate it automatically. And we have multiple mechanisms by which we can do this. So as one example of a project that we recently worked on is the detection of cut-ins. So you're driving down the highway, someone is on the left or on the right.
Oh yeah, it's got way better at that.
In front of you into your
way
lane.
better.
So here's a
video lots of videos in this.
Showing the autopilot detecting that this car is intruding into our lane. Now, of course, we'd like to detect a cut-in as fast as possible. So the way we approach this problem is we don't write explicit code for is the left blinker on, is the right blinker on, track the cuboid over time and see if it's moving horizontally. We actually use a fleet learning approach. So the way this works is we ask the fleet to please send us data whenever they see a car transition from a right lane to the center lane or from left to center. And then what we do is we rewind time backwards and we automatically can annotate that, hey, that car will in 1.3 seconds cut in front of you. And then we can use that for training the neural net. And so the neural net will automatically pick up on a lot of these patterns. So for example, the cars are typically yawed. They're moving this way. Maybe the blinker is on. All that stuff happens internally inside the neural net just from these examples. So we ask the fleet to automatically send us all this data. We can get 500,000 or so images, and all of these would be annotated for cut-ins, and then we train the network. And then we took this cut-in network and we deployed it to the fleet, but we don't turn it on yet. We run it in shadow mode. And in shadow mode, the network is always making predictions. Hey, I think this vehicle is going to cut in.
They run it in shadow mode all the time.
This vehicle is going to cut in.
The only time it's not in shadow mode is if they've released it on the software as an upgrade.
This is
They're doing stuff, all kinds of things in shadow mode
of the cut-in network. And it's kind of hard to see, but the network thought that the vehicle right ahead of us on the right is going to cut in. And you can sort of see that it's slightly flirting with the lane line. It's sort of encroaching a little bit.
Yeah,
and
newer versions have been noticing this and reacting to it.
Will actually end up in our center lane. That turns out to be incorrect, and the vehicle did not actually do that. So what we do now is
better be safe than sorry.
The data engine. We source that ran in the shadow mode. It's making predictions. It makes some false positives, and there are some false negative detections. So we got overexcited and sometimes we missed a cut-in when it actually happened. All those create a trigger that streams to us, and that gets incorporated now for free. There's no humans harmed in the process of labeling this data. Incorporated for free into our training set. We retrain the network and redeploy the shadow mode. And so we can spin this a few times, and we always look at the false positives and negatives coming from the fleet. And once we're happy with the false positive, false negative ratio, we actually flip the bit and actually let the car control to that network. And so you may have noticed, we actually shipped one of our first versions of a cut-in detector approximately, I think, 3 months ago. So if you've noticed that the car is much better at detecting cut-ins,
oh yeah,
that's fleet learning.
Yep.
Operating.
Definitely noticed that.
Yes. It actually works quite nicely. So that's fleet learning. No humans were harmed in the process. It's just a lot of neural network training based on data and a lot of shadow mode and looking at those results. Another,
essentially, like, everyone's training the network all the time is what it amounts to. Whether autopilot is on or off,
Yep,
the network is being trained.
it's on. The cameras are always
Every
on.
mile that's driven for the car that's hardware 2 or above is training the network.
Yep.
yeah. Another interesting way that we use this in the scheme of fleet learning, the other project that I will talk about, is path prediction. So while you are driving the car, what you're actually doing is you are annotating the data because you are steering the wheel. You're telling us how to traverse different environments. So what we're looking at here is some person in the fleet who took a left through an intersection. And what we do here is we have the full video of all the cameras, and we know that the path that this person took because of the GPS, the inertial measurement unit, the wheel angle, the wheel ticks. So we put all that together and we understand the path that this person took through this environment. And then, of course, we can use this for supervision for the network. So we just source a lot of this from the fleet.
Yeah, they are technos, definitely. Just recently, like you said.
And then the neural network predicts paths just from that data. So really what this is referred to typically is called imitation learning. We're taking human trajectories from the real world and we're just trying to imitate how people drive in real worlds. And we can also apply the same data engine crank to all of this and make this work over time. So here's an example of path prediction going through a kind of a complicated environment. So what you're seeing here is a video, and we are overlaying the predictions of the network. So this is a path that the network would follow in green. And
I mean, the crazy thing is the network is predicting paths it can't even see with incredibly high accuracy. It can't see around the corner, but it's saying the probability of that curve is extremely high. So that's the path. And it nails it. You will see that in the cars today. But we're going to turn on augmented vision, so you can see the lane lines and the path predictions of the cars overlaid on the video.
Yeah. There's actually more going on under the hood that you can even tell.
I mean, it's kind of scary, to be honest.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of details I'm skipping over. You might not want to annotate all the drivers. You might want to just imitate the better drivers, and there's many technical ways that we actually slice and dice that data. But the interesting thing here is that this prediction is actually a 3D prediction that we project back to the image here. So the path here forward is a 3-dimensional thing that we're just rendering in 2D. But we know about the slope of the ground from all this, and that's actually extremely valuable for driving. So path prediction actually is live in the fleet today, by the way. So if you're driving cloverleafs, if you're in a cloverleaf on the highway, until maybe 5 months ago or so, your car would not be able to do cloverleaf.
Oh, I know that.
That's path prediction running live on your cars. We've shipped this a while ago. And today you are going to get to experience this for traversing intersections. A large component of how we go through intersections in your drives today is all sourced from path prediction from automatic labels. So what I talked about so far is really the 3 key components of how we iterate on the predictions of the network and how we make it work over time. You require large, varied, and real data set. We can really achieve that here at Tesla. And we do that through the scale of the fleet, the data engine, shipping things in shadow mode, iterating that cycle, and potentially even using fleet learning where no human annotators are harmed in the process, and just using data automatically, and we can really do that at scale.
My computer. All right, here we go.
So in the next section of my talk, I'm going to especially talk about depth perception using vision only. So you might be familiar that there are at least 2 sensors in the car. One is vision, cameras, just getting pixels, and the other is LiDAR that a lot of companies also use. And LiDAR gives you these point measurements of distance around you. Now, one thing I'd like to point out, first of all, is you all came here, you drove here, many of you, and you used your neural net and vision. You were not shooting lasers out of your eyes, and you still ended up here.
We might have.
So things went well.
That's for everyone.
So clearly, the human neural net derives distance and all the measurements and the 3D understanding of the world just from vision. It actually uses multiple cues to do so. I'll just briefly go over some of them, just to give you a sense of roughly what's going on inside. As an example, we have 2 eyes pointed out, so you get 2 independent measurements at every single time step of the world ahead of you, and your brain stitches this information together to arrive at some depth estimation because you can triangulate any points across those 2 viewpoints. A lot of animals, instead, have eyes that are positioned on the sides, so they have very little overlap in their visual fields, so they will typically use structure for motion, and the idea is that they bob their heads And because of the movement, they actually get multiple observations of the world, and you can triangulate, again, depths. And even with one eye closed and completely motionless, you can still have some sense of depth perception. If you did this, I don't think you would notice me coming 2 meters towards you or 100 meters back. And that's because there are a lot of very strong monocular cues that your brain also takes into account. This is an example of a pretty common visual illusion where you have, these two blue bars are identical, but your brain, the way it stitches up the scene, is it just expects one of them to be larger than the other because of the vanishing lines of this image. So your brain does a lot of this automatically. And neural nets, artificial neural nets can as well. So let me give you 3 examples of how you can arrive at depth perception from vision alone. A classical approach and 2 that rely on neural networks. So here's a video going down, I think this is San Francisco, of a Tesla. So these are our cameras, our sensing, and we're looking at I'm only showing the main camera, but all the cameras are turned on, the 8 cameras of the autopilot. And if you just have this 6-second clip, what you can do is you can stitch up this environment in 3D using multi-view stereo techniques. So this is supposed to be a video.
Uh-oh.
Is it not a video? Oh, I know it's a video. There we go. So this is the 3D reconstruction of those 6 seconds of that car driving through that path. And you can see that this information is very well recoverable from just videos. And roughly that's through process of triangulation and, as I mentioned, multi-view stereo. And we've applied similar techniques, slightly more sparse and proximate, also in the car. So it's remarkable. All that information is really there in the sensor, and just a matter of extracting it. The other project that I want to briefly talk about is, as I mentioned, there's nothing about neural network. Neural networks are very powerful visual recognition engines. And if you want them to predict depth, then you need to, for example, look for labels of depth, and then they can actually do that extremely well. So there's nothing limiting networks from predicting this monocular depth, except for labeled data. So one example project that we've actually looked at internally is we use the forward-facing radar, which is shown in blue, and that radar is looking out and measuring depths of objects.
That's the only radar Tesla has, behind the front bumper.
What vision is seeing, the bounding boxes that come out of the neural networks. So instead of human annotators telling you, okay, this car in this bounding box is roughly 25 meters away, you can annotate that data much better using sensors. So you use sensor annotation. So as an example, radar is quite good at that distance. You can annotate that, and then you can train a neural network on it. And if you just have enough data of it, this neural network is very good at predicting those patterns. So here's an example of predictions of that. So in circles, I'm showing radar objects, and the cuboids that are coming out here are purely from vision. So the cuboids here are just coming out of vision, and the depth of those cuboids is learned via sensor annotation from the radar. So if this is working very well, then you would see that the circles in the top-down view would agree with the cuboids, and they do. And that's because neural networks are very competent at predicting depths. They can learn the different sizes of vehicles internally, and they know how big those vehicles are, and you can actually derive depth from that quite accurately. The last mechanism I will talk about very briefly is slightly more fancy and gets a bit more technical, but it is a mechanism that has recently, there's a few papers basically over the last year or 2 on this approach. It's called self-supervision. So what you do in a lot of these papers is you only feed raw videos into neural networks with no labels whatsoever, and you can still get neural networks to learn depth. And it's a little bit technical, so I can't go into the full details, but the idea is that the neural network predicts depth at every single frame of that video, and then there are no explicit targets that the neural network is supposed to regress to with the labels, but instead, the objective for the network is to be consistent over time. So whatever depth you predict should be consistent over the duration of that video, and the only way to be consistent is to be right. And so the neural network automatically predicts the correct depths for all the pixels, and we've reproduced some of these results internally, so this also works quite well. So in summary, people drive with vision only, no lasers are involved. This seems to work quite well. The point that I'd like to make is that visual recognition, very powerful visual recognition, is absolutely necessary for autonomy. It's not a nice to have. Like, we must have neural networks that actually really understand the environment around you. And LiDAR points are a much less information-rich environment. So vision really understands the full details. Just a few points around there's much less information in those. So as an example, on the left here, is that a plastic bag or is that a tire? A LiDAR might just give you a few points on that, but vision can tell you which one of those 2 is true, and that impacts your control. Is that person who is slightly looking backwards, are they trying to merge into your lane on the bike? or are they just going forward? In the construction sites, what do those signs say? How should I behave in this
There
world?
we go.
The entire infrastructure that we have built up for roads is all designed for human visual consumption. So all the signs, all the traffic lights, everything is designed for vision.
That's true.
And so that's where all that information is. And so you need that ability. Is that person distracted and on their phone? Are they going to walk into your lane? Those answers to all these questions are only found in vision and are necessary for level 4, level 5 autonomy. And that is the capability that we are developing at Tesla. And this is done through combination of large-scale neural network training, through data engine and getting that to work over time, and using power of the fleet. And so in this sense, LiDAR is really a shortcut. It sidesteps the fundamental problems, the important problem of visual recognition that is necessary for autonomy.
True.
And so it gives a false sense of progress, and it's ultimately a crutch. It does give like really fast demos. So if I was to summarize the entire, my entire talk in one slide, it would be this. All of autonomy, because you want level 4, level 5 systems that can handle all the possible situations in 99.99% of the cases. And chasing some of the last few knives is going to be very tricky and very difficult, and is going to require a very powerful visual system. So I'm showing you some images of what you might encounter in any one slice of that 9. So in the beginning, you just have very simple cars going forward. Then those cars start to look a little bit funny. Then maybe you have bikes on cars. Then maybe you have cars on cars. Then maybe you start to get into really rare events like cars turned over or even cars airborne. We see a lot of things coming from the fleet.
Oh my
and we see
gosh.
them at some rate, at like a really good rate compared to all of our competitors. And so the rate of progress at which you can actually address these problems, iterate on the software, and really feed the
Much
neural networks with
higher,
the right
much
data,
quicker.
that rate of progress is really just proportional to how often you encounter these situations in the wild. And we encounter them significantly more frequently than anyone else.
That's true.
Which is why we're going to do extremely well. Okay, thank you.
What about the arms folded there? It's not a very good body language. It's like challenging people. All right.
It's all super impressive. Thank you so much. How much data, how many pictures are you collecting on average from
Yes,
each
I'm
car
clapping.
per period of time? And then it sounds like the new hardware with the dual active computers gives you some really interesting opportunities to run in full simulation one copy of the neural net while you're letting the other one drive the car and compare the results to do quality assurance. And then I was also
That's
wondering
true.
if there are other opportunities to use the computers for training when they're parked in the garage for the 90% of the time that I'm not driving my Tesla around. Thank you very much.
Yep. So for the first question, how much data do we get from the fleet? So it's really important to point out, it's not just the scale of the data set, it really is the variety of that data set that matters. If you just have lots of images of something going forward on the highway, at some point the neural net just gets it. You don't need that data. So we are really strategic in how we pick and choose, and the trigger infrastructure that we've built up is quite sophisticated and allows us to get just the data that we need right now. And so it's not a massive amount of data, it's just very well picked data. For the second question, with respect to redundancy, absolutely, you can run basically the copy of the network on both, and that is actually how it's designed to achieve a level 4, level 5 system that is redundant. So that's absolutely the case. And your last question, I'm sorry, I did not.
Training. The car is
You got the arms folded again.
optimized computer. We do have a major program at Tesla, which we don't have enough time to talk about today, called Dojo. That's a super powerful training computer. The goal of Dojo will be to be able to take in vast amounts of data and train at a video level and do unsupervised massive training of vast amounts of video with the Dojo program, Dojo computer. But that's for another day.
All right.
Test pilot in a way, because I drive the 405, 10, and all these really tricky, really long tail things happen every day. But the one challenge that I'm curious to how you're going to solve is changing lanes. Because whenever I try to get into a lane with traffic, everybody cuts you off. And so human behavior is very irrational when you're driving in LA, and the car just wants to do it safely, and you almost have to do it unsafely. So I was wondering how you're going to solve that problem.
Yeah. So one thing I will point out is I spoke about the data engine as iterating on neural networks, but we do the exact same thing on the level of software and all the hyperparameters that go into the choices of when we actually lane change, how aggressive we are. We're always changing those, potentially running them in shadow mode and seeing how well they work. And so to tune our
Always
heuristics
improving,
around
yeah.
when it's okay to lane change, we would also potentially utilize the data engine and the shadow mode and so on. Ultimately, actually designing all the different heuristics for when it's okay to lane change is actually a little bit intractable, I think, in the general case. And so ideally, you actually want to use fleet learning to guide those decisions. So when do humans lane change, in what scenarios, and when do they feel it's not safe to lane change? And let's just look at a lot of the data and train machine learning classifiers for distinguishing when it is too safe to do so. And those machine learning classifiers can write much better code than humans because they have the massive amount of data backing that. So they can really tune all the right thresholds and agree with humans and do something safe.
Well, I think we'll probably have a mode that goes beyond Mad Max mode to LA traffic mode. Yeah. Well, Mad Max would have a hard time in LA traffic, I think.
Yeah, so really it's a trade-off. Like, you don't want to create unsafe situations, but you want to be assertive. But that little dance of how you make that work as a human is actually very complicated, and it's very hard to write in code. But I think we really do, it really does seem like machine learning approach is kind of like the right way to go about it, where we just look at a lot of ways that people do this and try to imitate that.
We're just being more conservative right now, and then as we gain higher and higher confidence, we'll allow users to select a more aggressive mode. That'll be up to the user. But in the more aggressive modes, in trying to merge in traffic, there is a slight, no matter how many, there's a slight chance of a fender bender, not a serious accident, but you basically will have a choice of, do you want to have a non-zero chance of a fender bender on freeway traffic, which is unfortunately the only way to navigate LA traffic. Yes.
Huh. I wonder how this is going to affect the insurance rates. They watch how you select those things.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, you do. Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes. And it was reminds me of LA Story. It was a great movie.
Yeah, it's very solid because this is a game of chicken that's going on.
Yeah. We'll have more aggressive options over time that will be user specified. Yes, Mad Max Plus, exactly.
Yeah.
Hello? Hi, Jed Dorsheimer from Canaccord Genuity. Thank you and congratulations on everything that you've developed. When we look at the AlphaZero project, it was a very defined and limited variable in terms of the parameters on that, which allowed for the learning curve to be so quick. The risk, or what you're trying to do here is almost develop consciousness in the cars through the neural network. And so,
True.
I guess the challenge is, how do you not create a circular reference in terms of the pulling from the centralized model of the fleet to that handoff where the car has enough information? Where is that line, I guess, in terms of the point of the learning process to handing it off, where there's enough information in the car and not having to pull from the fleet?
Well, the car can operate if it's completely disconnected from the fleet. It uploads the training that's
Areas where there's no signal,
better,
especially.
better, as the fleet gets better and better. So simply, if you disconnected it from the fleet, from that point onwards, it would stop getting better, but it would still function fine.
They're going to need that for areas without signal or adequate coverage of cellular data.
In the previous version, it talked about a lot of the power benefits of not storing a lot of the images. And so in this portion, you're talking about the learning that's going on by pulling from the fleet. I guess I'm having a hard time reconciling how, if there was a situation where I'm driving up the hill, as you showed, and I'm predicting where the road is going to go, that's coming from all of the other fleet variables that led to that intelligence. How I'm getting the benefit of the low power using the cameras with the neural network. That's where I'm losing the two. Maybe it's just me, but I guess that's.
I mean, the compute power in the full self-driving computer is incredible. And maybe we should mention that if it had never seen that road before, it would still have made those predictions, provided it was a road in the United States.
Oh, there's the difference between the United States and other places. Wonder why. I guess it's because of the way that highways are built in the United States. But doesn't mean it's a road without lines.
March of Nines. Isn't there an example? I want to just get to your slam on LiDAR because it's pretty clear.
Slam on LiDAR.
LiDAR's lame. LiDAR is lame.
That isn't there like a case where at some point 99999 down the road where actually LiDAR may be helpful, and why not have it as some sort of a redundancy or backup? So that's my first question. And the second, so you can still have your focus on computer vision, but just have it as a redundant. My second question is, if that is true, what happens to the rest of the industry that's building their autonomy solutions on LiDAR?
They're all going to dump LiDAR, that's my prediction. Mark my words. I should point out that I don't actually super hate LiDAR as much as they sound, but at SpaceX, SpaceX Dragon uses LiDAR to navigate to the space station and dock. Not only that, SpaceX developed its own LiDAR from scratch to do that, and I spearheaded that effort personally, because in that scenario, LiDAR makes sense, and in cars, it's friggin' stupid. It's expensive and unnecessary, and as Andre was saying, once you solve vision, it's worthless. So you have expensive hardware that's worthless on the car. We do have a forward radar, which is low cost and is helpful, especially for occlusion situations. So if there's like fog or dust or snow,
It still shuts off on fog, though. I can tell you that.
If you're going to use active photon generation, don't use visible wavelength, because once with passive optical, you've taken care of all visible wavelength stuff. You want to use a wavelength that is occlusion penetrating, like radar. So LiDAR is just active photon generation in the visual spectrum. If you're going to do active photon generation, do it outside the visual spectrum in the radar spectrum. So like at 3.8 millimeters versus 400 to 700 nanometers, you're going to be much better occlusion penetration, and that's why we have a forward radar. And then we also have 12 ultrasonics for near field information, in addition to the 8 cameras and the forward radar. You only need the radar in the forward direction because that's the only direction going real fast. So it's, we've gone over this multiple times, like, are we sure we have the right sensor suite? Should we add anything more? No.
Sensor suite.
Hi. Right here. So you had mentioned that you asked the fleet for the information that you're looking for some of the vision. I have two questions about that. It sounds like the cars are doing some computation to determine what kind of information to send back to you. Is that a correct assumption? And are they doing that in real time, or are they doing based on stored information?
Yep. So they absolutely do computation in real time on the car. And we have a way to basically specify condition that we're interested in. And then those cars do that computation there. If they did not, then we'd have to send all the data and do that offline in our backend. We don't want to do that. So all that computation happens on the car.
So it's based on that question, it sounds like you guys are in a really good position to have currently 500,000 cars, in the future potentially millions of cars that are essentially computers representing almost free data centers for you to do computational.
It's always been like that.
Is that a huge future
since 2016 October?
That is a current opportunity, and that's not really factored in for anything yet.
It has been for people who know.
We have 425,000 cars with hardware 2 and beyond, which means they've got all 8 cameras, the radar, and ultrasonics.
The sensor suite.
And they've got at least the NVIDIA computer, which is enough to essentially figure out what information is important, what is not, compress the information that is important to the most salient elements, and upload it to the network for training. So it's a massive compression of real-world data.
But this has been known since the end of 2016. They're just now talking about it. We should have been talking about this a long time ago. I have been, but no one else has, apparently.
Sort of network of millions of computers, which is like massive data centers, essentially, that are distributed data centers for computational capacity. Do you see it being used for other things besides self-driving in the future?
I suppose it could possibly be used for something besides self-driving. We've been too focused on self-driving, so as we get that really nailed, maybe there's going to be some other use for millions and then tens of millions of computers with hardware 3 or full self-driving computer. Yeah, maybe there would be. It could be. It could be. Maybe there's like some sort of AWS angle here. It's possible.
Hello. Hi, Elon. Matt Joyce, Loop Ventures. I own a Model 3 in Minnesota where it snows a lot. Since camera and radar cannot see road markings through snow, what is your technical strategy to solve this?
This is a good question.
Does it involve high precision GPS at all?
Yeah, so actually, like today, Autopilot will do a decent job in snow, even when lane markings are covered. Even when lane markings are faded, covered, or when there's lots of rain on them, we still seem to drive relatively well. We didn't specifically go after snow yet with our data engine, but I actually think this is completely tractable because in a lot of those images, even when things are snowy, when you ask a human annotator where are the lane lines, they actually could tell you. They actually are relatively consistent in creating those lane lines. As long as the annotators are consistent on your data, then the neural network will pick up on those patterns and will be just fine. So it's really just about, is the signal there even for the human annotator? If the answer to that is yes, then the neural network can do it just fine.
Yeah, there's actually there are a number of important signals, as Andre was saying. So lane lines are one of those things, but one of the most important signals is drive space. So what is drivable space and what is not drivable space? What actually really matters the most is drivable space more than lane lines. And the prediction of drivable space is extremely good. And I think especially after this upcoming winter will be incredible. It's like, it will be like, how could it possibly be that good? That's crazy. Yeah.
The other thing to point out is maybe it's not even only about human annotators. As long as you as a human can drive through that environment, then through fleet learning, we actually know the path you took. And you obviously used vision to guide you through that path. You did not just use the lane line markings. You used the entire geometry of that entire scene. So you see, you see how the road is roughly curling. You see how the cars are positioned around you. Neural network will pick up on all of those patterns automatically and cite it if you just have enough of the data people traversing those environments.
Yeah, it's actually extremely important that things not be rigidly tied to GPS, because GPS error can vary quite a bit, and the actual situation for a road can vary quite a bit. So there could be construction, there could be a detour, and if the car is using GPS as primary, this is a real bad situation. It's asking for trouble. It's fine to use GPS for like tips and tricks. So it's like you can drive your home neighborhood better than a neighborhood in like some other country or some other part of the country. So you know your own neighborhood well, and you use kind of like the knowledge of your neighborhood to drive with more confidence, to maybe have counterintuitive shortcuts and that kind of thing. But the GPS overlay data should only be helpful but never primary. If it's ever primary, it's a problem.
So question back here in the back corner. I just want to that because several of your competitors in the space over the past few years have made, have talked about how they are augmenting all of their perception and path planning capabilities that are kind of on the car platform with high definition maps of the areas that they are driving. Does that play a role in your system? Do you see it adding any value? Are there areas where you would like to get more data?
This is a good question.
Not collected from the fleet, but is more kind of mapping style data.
I think the high precision GPS maps and lanes are a really bad idea. The system becomes extremely brittle. So any change, like this might, any change to the system makes it can't adapt. So if it locks onto GPS and high precision lane lines, and does not allow vision override. In fact, vision should be the thing that that does everything, and then like lane lines are a guideline, but they're not the main thing. We briefly balked up the tree of high precision lane lines, and then realized that was a huge mistake, and reversed it out. It's not good.
Maps change too, is what he's talking about, I think, and they don't update them quick enough.
So this is very helpful for understanding annotation, where the objects are and how the car drives, but what about the negotiation aspect for parking and roundabouts and other things where there are other cars on the road that are human driven, where it's more art than science?
It does pretty good, actually. Like with cut-ins and stuff, it's doing really well.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we're using a lot of machine learning right now in terms of predicting, kind of creating an explicit representation of what the road looks like, and then there's an explicit planner and a controller on top of that representation, and there's a lot of heuristics for how to traverse and negotiate and so on. There is a long tail, just like in what visual environments look like, there's a long tail in just those negotiations and the little game of chicken that you play with other people and so on. And so I think we have a lot of confidence that eventually there must be some kind of a fleet learning component to how you actually do that, because writing all those rules by hand is going to quickly plateau, I think.
Yeah, we've dealt with this issue with cut-ins, and it's like we'll allow gradually more aggressive behavior on the part of the user. You can just dial the setting up and say be more aggressive,
like a yield
be less
sign.
aggressive, drive easy, chill mode, aggressive. Yeah.
What will the insurance think of that, though?
Incredible progress, phenomenal. Two questions. First, in terms of platooning, do you think the system is geared? Because somebody asked about when there is snow on the road, but if you have platooning feature, you can just follow the car in front. Is your system capable of doing that? Then I have two follow-ups.
So you're asking about platooning. So I think like we could absolutely build those features, but again, if you just train neural networks, for example, on imitating humans already like follow the car ahead, and so that neural network actually incorporates those patterns internally. It figures out that there's a correlation between the way the car ahead of you faces and the path that you are going to take. But that's all done internally in the net. So you're just concerned with getting enough data and the tricky data, and the neural network training process actually is quite magical. Does all the other stuff automatically. So you turn all the different problems into just one problem. Just collect your data set and use neural network training.
Yeah, there's three steps to self-driving. There's being feature complete, then there's being feature complete to the degree that where we think that the person in the car does not need to pay attention, and then there's being at a reliability level where we've also convinced regulators that is true. So there's kind of like three levels. We expect to be feature complete in self-driving this year, and we expect to be confident enough from our standpoint to say that we think people do not need to touch the wheel, look out of the window, sometime probably around, I don't know, second quarter of next year. And then we start to expect to get regulatory approval, at least in some jurisdictions, for that towards the end of next year.
And
that's roughly the timeline that I expect things to go on. And probably for trucks, the platooning will be approved by regulators before anything else. And you can have like maybe if you're doing long haul freight, you can have one driver in the front and then have four semis trailing behind in a platooning manner, and I think that probably regulators will be quicker to approve that than other things.
Ahmed, this is Tesla explaining their full self-driving progress.
Convince us LiDAR is a technology, in my opinion, which has an answer looking for a question probably that, this is very impressive what we saw today, and probably demo could show something more. I was wondering, what is the maximum dimension of a matrix that you may be having in your training?
You're welcome.
Or in your deep learning pipeline.
We've already done hardware, this is software, and then we've got one more after this.
Matrix. So, you're doing a lot of matrix multiply operations inside the neural network. You're asking about there's many different ways to answer that question, but I'm not 100% sure if they're useful. They're useful answers. These neural networks will typically have, like I mentioned, about tens to hundreds of millions of neurons. Each of them will, on average, have about 1,000 connections to neurons below. So those are the typical scales that are kind of used across the industry, and also that we would use as well.
Yeah, I've been actually very impressed by the rate of improvement on autopilot the past year on my Model 3. The two scenarios I wanted your feedback on. Last week, the first scenario was I was on the right-hand most lane of the freeway, and there was a highway on-ramp. And then my Model 3 actually was able to detect the two cars on the side, slow down and let the car go in front of me and one car go behind me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like insane. Like I didn't think my Model 3 could do that. So that was like super impressive. But the same week, another scenario, which is I was on the right-hand lane again, but my right-hand lane was merging with the left lane. And it wasn't an on-ramp, it's just a normal freeway lane. And my Model 3 wasn't able to detect really that situation, and I wasn't able to slow down or speed up, and I had to intervene, kind of. So can you, from your perspective, kind of share kind of the background on how a neural net would, how Tesla might adjust for that, and like how that could be improved over time?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have a very sophisticated trigger infrastructure. If you have intervened, it's actually potentially likely that we receive that clip and that we can actually analyze it and see what happened and tune the system. So it probably enters some statistics over, okay, at what rate are we correctly merging the traffic? And we look at those numbers and we look at the clips and we see what's wrong and we try to fix those clips and make progress against those benchmarks. Yeah, so we would potentially go through a phase of categorization, and then we look at some of the biggest categories that actually seem to semantically be related to to the same problem, and then we would look at some of those, and then try to develop software against that.
Okay, we do have one more presentation, which is the software. So there's like essentially the autopilot hardware with Stuart. There's the sort of neural net vision with Andre.
Okay, neural net. Hardware, neural net, then software.
Scale, that's like presented by Stuart. So thanks, and we'll have an opportunity afterwards to ask questions. So yeah, thanks.
I just wanted to very briefly say, if you have an early flight and you want to do a test ride with our latest development software, if you could please speak to my colleague Anne or drop her an email, and we can take you out for a test ride. And Stuart, over to you.
All right, so that's actually from a clip of a longer than 30-minute uninterrupted drive with no interventions, navigating autopilot on the highway system, which is in production today on hundreds of thousands of cars. So I'm Stuart, and I'm here to talk about how we build some of these systems at scale. Just like a really short introduction on kind of where I'm coming from, what I do. So I've been in a couple companies over the last, I've been writing software profession for about 12 years. The thing that excites me most and I'm really passionate about is taking the cutting edge of machine learning and actually connecting that with customers through robustness and scale. So at Facebook, I worked initially inside of our ads infrastructure to build some of the machine learning, some really, really smart people. And we actually tried to build that into a single platform that we could then scale to all the other aspects of the business, from how we rank the news feed, to how we deliver search results, to how we make every recommendation across the platform. And that became the Applied Machine Learning Group. That's something I'm incredibly proud of. And a lot of that wasn't just the core algorithms and the really important improvements that happen there, because that matters. A lot of it's actually the engineering practices to build these systems at scale. And the same thing was true at Snap, where I went, where we were really, really excited to sort of actually help to monetize this product. But the hardest part, we were using Google at the time, and they were effectively, running us on a fairly small scale. And we wanted to build that same infrastructure. We take an understanding of these users, connect that with cutting-edge machine learning, build that at massive scale, and handle billions and then trillions of both predictions and auctions every day, in which is really robust. And so when the opportunity came to come to Tesla, that's something I'm just like incredibly excited to do, which is specifically take the amazing things that are happening both on the hardware side and the computer vision and AI side, and actually package that together with all the planning, the controls, the testing, the kernel patching of the operating system, all of our continuous integration, our simulation, and actually build that into a product we get onto people's cars in production today. And so I want to talk about the timeline for how we did that with Navigate on Autopilot, and how we're going to do that as we get Navigate on Autopilot off the highway and onto city streets. So we're at 70 million miles already for Navigate on Autopilot. It's something we're like really, really cool. And I think one thing that is worth kind of calling out on this is that we're continuing to accelerate and keep learning from this data. Like Andre talked about this data engine, as this accelerates up, we actually do make more and more assertive lane changes. We are learning from these cases where people intervene, either because they failed to detect a merge correctly, or because they wanted the car to be a little more peppy in different environments, and we just want to keep making that progress. So to start all of this, we begin with trying to understand the world around us. And we talked about the different sensors in the vehicle, but I want to dig in a little bit more here. We have 8 cameras, but then we also have additionally 12 ultrasonic sensors, radar, an inertial measurement unit, GPS, and then one thing we forget about is we also have the pedal and steering actions. So not only can we look at what's happening around the vehicle, we can look at how humans chose to interact with that environment. And so I'll talk through this clip right now. This basically is showing what's happening today in the car, and we're continuing to push this forward. So we start with a single neural network. We see the detections around it. We then build all that together with multiple neural networks and multiple detections. We bring in the other sensors, and we convert that into what Elon calls a vector space, an understanding of the world around us. And this is something where, as we continue to get better and better at this, we're moving more and more of this logic into the neural networks themselves. And the obvious end game here is that the neural network looks across all the cars, brings in all the information together, and just ultimately outputs a source of truth for the world around us. And this is actually not like an artist rendering in many senses. This is actually the output of one of the debugging tools that we use on the team every day to understand what the world looks like around us. So another thing that I think is really, really exciting to me, and I think when I do hear about sensors like LiDAR, a common question is around just having extra sensor modalities. Like, why not have some redundancy on the vehicle? And I want to dig in on one thing that's not always obvious with neural networks themselves. So we have a neural network running on our, say, wide fisheye camera. That neural network is not making one prediction about the world. It's making many separate predictions, some of which actually audit each other. So as a real example, we have the ability to detect a pedestrian. That's something we train very, very carefully on and put a lot of work into. We also have the ability to detect obstacles in the roadway, and a pedestrian is an obstacle. And it's shown differently to the neural network. It says, oh, there's a thing I can't drive through. And these together combine to give us an increased sense of what we can and can't do in front of the vehicle and how to plan for that. We then do this across multiple cameras because we have overlapping fields of view in many places around the vehicle. In front, we have a particularly large number of overlapping fields of view. Lastly, we can combine that with things like the radar and the ultrasonics to build these extremely precise understandings of what's happening in front of the car. We can use that both to learn future behaviors that are very accurate. We can also build very accurate predictions of how things will continue to happen in front of us. So one example I think is really exciting is we can actually look at bicyclists and people and not just ask, where are you now, but where are you going? And this is actually the heart of what we're doing for our next generation automatic emergency braking system, which will not just stop for people in your path, it'll stop for people who are going to be in your path. And that's running in shadow mode right now, and we'll go out to the fleet this quarter.
That's pretty cool. I think it's also with the people lurking and going into your lanes,
like
same technology.
On autopilot on the highway system. You can start by learning from data, and you just look at how humans do things today. What is their assertiveness profile? How do they change lanes? What causes?
I can learn from this guy. He never stops moving.
Like their maneuvers.
I have to keep moving the camera to keep up with him.
Oh yeah, simultaneous merging is rare, but very complicated and very important. And you can start to build opinions about different scenarios, such as a fast overtaking vehicle. So this is what we do when we initially have some algorithms we want to try out. We can put them on the fleet, and we can see what they would have done in a real-world scenario.
Shadow mode, yep, that's it, all the time.
This is taken from our actual simulation environment, showing different paths that we have considered taking and how those overlay on the real-world behavior of a user. When you get those algorithms tuned up and you feel good about them, specifically, and this is really taking that output of the neural network, putting it in that vector space, and building and tuning these parameters on top of it, ultimately, I think we can do through more and more machine learning. You go into a controlled deployment, which for us is our early access program. And this, you get this out to a couple thousand.
I don't have that.
We're really excited to give you.
I'm really excited, but I'll probably put it on YouTube.
About how this behaves,
and I can't do that.
Open loop, but in a closed loop way in the real world, and you watch their interventions. And we talked about this, like when somebody takes over, we can actually get that clip, try to understand what happens. And one thing we can really do is we can actually play this back again in an open loop way and ask, as we build our software, are we getting closer or further from how humans behave in the real world? And one thing which is super cool with the full self-driving computers, we're actually building our own racks and infrastructure. So we basically can put 4 of our full self-driving computers fully racked up, build these into our own cluster, and actually run this very sophisticated data infrastructure to actually understand over time, as we tune and fix these algorithms, are we getting closer and closer to how humans behave?
Hey, I've also noticed that the Tesla speakers are getting faster and faster with each one. This guy speaks faster than the second one, and he speaks faster than the first.
to start, we actually asked everybody to confirm the car's behavior via stock confirm. And so we started making lots and lots of predictions about how we should be navigating the highway. We asked people to tell us, is this right or is this wrong? And this is, again, a chance to churn that data engine. And we did spot some really tricky and interesting long tails of, in this case, I think a really fun example, like these very interesting cases of simultaneous merging where you start going and then somebody moves either behind or before you, not noticing you. And what is the appropriate behavior here? And what are the tunings of the neural network we need to do to be super precise about the appropriate behaviors here? We tuned these in the background, we made them better. And over the course of time, we got 9 million successfully accepted lane changes. And we use these, again, with our continuous integration infrastructure, to actually understand,
that's a lot.
Do we think we're ready? And this is one thing where full self-driving is also really exciting to me, since we own the entire software stack, straight from the kernel patching, all the way to the tuning on the image signal processor. We can start to collect even more data that is even more accurate.
Custom.
And this allows us to do even better and better tuning, these faster iteration cycles. And so earlier this month, we're ready to deploy an even more seamless version of Navigate on Autopilot on the highway system. And that seamless version does not require a stock confirm. So you can sit there, relax, put your hand on the wheel, and just oversee what the car is doing. And in this case, we're actually seeing over 100,000 automated lane changes every single day on the highway system. And this is something that's just like super cool to us to deploy at scale. And the thing that I'm kind of most excited about from all this is the actual life cycle of this and how we actually are able to turn that data engine crank faster and faster and faster with time. And I think one thing that's really becoming very clear is the combination of the infrastructure we have built, the tooling we built on top of that,
billions of
and the combined power of the full self-driving computer. I believe we can do this even faster as we move Navigate on Autopilot from the highway system onto city streets. And so, yeah, with that, I'll hand off to Elon.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, all those lane changes have occurred with 0 accidents.
That is correct, yeah. I watch every single accident.
Yeah.
Okay, how many accidents?
But it's
not all the lane changes,
hundreds
but
of thousands, going to millions of lane changes and 0 accidents is, I think, a great achievement by the Tesla team.
Thank you.
Cool.
and the insurers applaud you as well.
So let's see. A few other things that I'm familiar with mentioning. In order to have a self-driving car or robotaxi, you really need redundancy throughout the vehicle at the hardware level. So starting in, I believe it was October 2016, all cars made by Tesla have redundant power steering. So redundant motors in the power steering. So any one failure of the, if the
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that.
Will steer. All of the
So I've got
power
that.
and data lines have redundancy. So you can sever any given power line or any data line, and the car will keep driving.
Huh.
The auxiliary power system, even if the main pack, you lose complete power in the main pack, the car is capable of steering and braking using the auxiliary power system. So you completely lose the main pack, and the car is safe. The whole system, from a hardware standpoint, has been designed to be a robotaxi since basically October 2016.
Yep.
So when we rolled out hardware at Autopilot version 2.
This has been going on
But we do not expect
for
to upgrade cars made before
about
that.
2 hours, 15
it
minutes.
actually costs more to make a new car than to upgrade the cars. Just to give you a sense of how hard it is to do this.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's designed in, it's not worth it.
All right, well, he's saying not. You cannot retrofit.
So we've gone through the future of self-driving.
That's what I got out of that.
It's hardware, it's vision, and then there's a lot of software, and there's the software problem here should not be minimized. It's a massive software problem managing vast amounts of data, training against the data. How do you control the car based on the vision? It's a very difficult software problem. So going over just like Tesla master plan. Obviously, we've made a bunch of forward-looking statements, as they call it.
I'm gonna have to analyze that about 2:45.
Let's go through some of our other forward-looking statements that we've made.
Whether pre-October 2016 cars can be made full self-driving.
Tesla Roadster.
Maybe not.
Possible, and that even if we did build it, nobody would buy it. This is like universal opinion was that building an electric car was extremely dumb and would fail. I agree with him that probability of failure was high, but that this was important. So we built the Tesla Roadster, got it into production in 2008, and shipping that car. It's now a collector's item. So we built a more affordable car with the Model S. We did that. Again, we were told that's impossible. I was called a fraud and a liar. It's not going to happen. This is all untrue. Okay, famous last words. Now is we went into production with the Model S in 2012. Exceeded all expectations. There is still, in 2019, no car that can compete with the Model S of 2012. It's 7 years later. Still waiting. An affordable car, maybe highly affordable. It's affordable, more affordable with the Model 3. We built the Model 3. We're in production. So we'd get over 5,000 cars a week for Model 3. At this point, 5,000 cars a week is a walk in the park for us. It's not even hard. So we do large-scale solar, which we did through the SolarCity acquisition, and that we develop and deploy the solar roof, which is going really well. We're now on version 3 of the solar tile roof, and we expect to spool up production of the solar tile roof significantly later this year.
They need to for Buffalo, New York, to get those
on my house, and it's great.
Or they'll have to pay back a lot of money. That's very important. They made a deal with Buffalo.
Powerwall and the Power Pack. We made the Powerwall and Power Pack. In fact, the Power Pack is now deployed in massive grid-scale utility systems around the world, including the largest operating battery projects in the world that above 100 megawatts. And in the next, or probably by the next year, 2 years at the most, we expect to have a gigawatt scale battery project completed. So all these things, I said we would do them, we did it. So we'd do it, we did it. We're going to do the robotaxi thing too. Only criticism, and it's a fair one, and sometimes I'm not on time.
Like today.
But I get it done. And the Tesla team gets it done. So what we're going to do this year is we're going to reach combined production of 10,000 a week between S6 and 3. Feel very confident about that. And we feel very confident about being feature complete with self-driving. Next year, we'll expand the product line with Model Y and Semi, and we expect to have the first operating
They call it
robotaxis
robotaxi.
with no one in them next year.
I'm ready.
It's always difficult to, like, when things are on an exponential, at an exponential rate of improvement, it's very difficult to kind of wrap one's mind around it because we're used to extrapolating on a linear basis. But when you've got massive amounts of like, as the hardware, massive amounts of hardware on the road, the cumulative data is increasing exponentially. The software is getting better at an exponential rate. I feel very confident predicting autonomous robotaxis for Tesla next year. Not in all jurisdictions because we won't have regulatory approval everywhere, but
The big cities.
We'll have at least regulatory approval somewhere literally next year.
The more forward-thinking states, most likely.
So any customer will be able to add or remove their car to the Tesla network.
And how much will
We
it
expect this
cost?
to operate,
What's the
it's
commission?
like a combination of maybe the Uber and Airbnb model. So if you own the car, you can add or subtract it to the Tesla network, and Tesla would take 25 or 30% of the revenue.
There we go.
And then in places where there aren't enough people sharing their cars, we would just have dedicated Tesla vehicles. So when you use the car, we'll show you our ride-sharing app. So you're able to summon the car from the parking lot, get in, and go for a drive. It's really simple. So you just take the same Tesla app that you currently have, we'll just update the app and add a summon Tesla, or commit your car to the fleet. So it's either summon your car, or summon a Tesla, or add or subtract your car to the fleet. You'll be able to do that from your phone. So we see potential for smoothing out the demand distribution curve, and having the car operate at a much higher utility than a normal car would operate. So, like typically the use
just
of
sitting
a car
parked.
is about 10 to 12 hours a week. So most people will drive 1.5 to 2 hours a day, typically 10 to 12 hours a week of total driving. But if you have a car that can operate autonomously, then most likely you'd have that car operate for a third of the week or longer. So they're 168 hours in a week. So probably you've got something on the order of 55 to 60 hours a week of operation, maybe a bit longer. So the fundamental utility of the vehicle increases by a factor of 5. So you can look at this from a macroeconomic standpoint and say, just if this was like if we were operating some big simulation, if you could upgrade your simulation to increase the utility of cars by a factor of 5, that would be a massive increase.
Oh yeah.
Economic efficiency of the simulation, just gigantic.
Most cars are parked most of the time. That's just a fact.
So we'll do Model 3, S3 and X as taxis, but we made an important change to our leases. So if you lease a Model 3, you don't have the option of buying it.
Yeah, I did the video on this too.
We want them back. If you buy the car, you can keep it. But if you lease it, you have to bring it back. And as I said, where in any locations where there's not enough supply for sharing, Tesla will just make its own cars and add them to the network in that place. So the current cost of Model 3 Robotaxi is less than $38,000. We expect that number to improve over time. And we're designing the cars currently being built are all designed for 1 million miles of operation.
Yeah, 1 million miles.
Designed and tested and validated for 1 million miles of operation. The current battery pack is about maybe 300 to 500,000 miles. The new battery pack that's probably going to production next year is designed explicitly for 1 million miles of operation. The entire vehicle, battery pack inclusive, it's designed to operate for 1 million miles with minimal maintenance. So we'll actually be adjusting tire design and really optimizing the car.
You gotta get that alignment in the rear tires and X and X. Get it fixed.
At some point,
I gotta fix
you won't
mine.
need steering wheels or pedals, and we'll just delete those. So as these things become less and less important, we'll just delete parts. They won't be there. You say like probably 2 years from now, we make a car that has no steering wheels or pedals. And if we need to accelerate that time, we can always just delete parts, easy. Probably, say long term, 3 years.
These vehicles are very low cost to operate, as it is.
Maybe it ends up being $25,000 or less.
I've had a set of tires and wiper blades at 100,000 miles. That's it.
Super efficient car, so the electricity consumption is very low. So we're currently at 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour, but we'll improve that to 5 and beyond. And there's just really no company that has the full stack integration.
That's true.
We've got the vehicle design and manufacturing, we've got the computer hardware in-house, we've got the in-house software development and AI, and we've got by far the biggest fleet. It's extremely difficult, not impossible perhaps, but extremely difficult to catch up when Tesla has 100 times more miles per day than everyone else combined. This is the cost of running a gasoline car, or the average cost of running a car in the US. This is taken from AAA. So it's currently about 62 cents a mile, 13,500 miles for 50 million vehicles, adds up to $2 trillion a year. These are literally just taken from the AAA website. Cost of ride sharing is, according to Uber and Lyft, is $2 to $3 a mile. The cost to run a robotaxi, we think, less than 18 cents a mile.
That includes electricity. Doesn't include people who already have it free with full
This would be current.
supercharging.
Current cost.
That includes electricity. It's going to be dramatically less if you already have free unlimited supercharging like I do. Dramatically less, like 5 or 6 cents a mile.
What would be the probable gross profit a single robotaxi. We think probably something on the order of $30,000 per year. And we expect that we're literally designing, we're designing the cars the same way that commercial semi-trucks are designed. Commercial semi-trucks are all designed for a 1,000,000-mile life, and we're designing the cars for a 1,000,000-mile life as well. So in nominal dollars, that would be, a little over $300,000 over the course of 11 years. Might be higher. I think these consumptions are actually relatively conservative, and this assumes that 50% of the miles driven are not useful. So this is only at 50% utility.
That's interesting.
By the middle of next year, we'll have over 1 million Tesla cars on the road with full self-driving hardware, feature complete, at a reliability level that we would consider that no one needs to pay attention. Meaning you could go to sleep, and from our standpoint, you fast
Look at
forward
that.
a year, maybe a year and 3 months.
200,000.
But next year, for sure, we will have over 1 million robo-taxis on the road.
Look at that lower right. Look at that.
The fleet wakes up with an over-the-air update.
200,000.
That's all it takes. You say what is the net present value of a robo-taxi? Probably on the order of a couple $100,000. So buying a Model 3 is a good deal. Any questions?
I don't know where you got that number from, 200,000. Maybe mine's worth more because I have full unlimited super charging for the life of the vehicle.
In our own fleet, I don't know, I guess long term we have probably on the order of 10 million vehicles. Our production rate generally, if you look at our compound annual production rate since 2012, which is that's our first full year of Model S production, we went from 23,000 vehicles produced in 2013 to around 250,000 vehicles produced last year. So in the course of 5 years, we increased output by a factor of 10. I would expect that something similar occurs over the next 5 or 6 years. As for sharing versus, I don't know. The nice thing is that essentially customers are fronting us the money for the car. It's great.
So in terms of the one thing is the snake charger, I'm curious about that. And also, how did you determine the pricing? Looks like you're undercutting the average Lyft or Uber ride by about 50%. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the pricing strategy.
Sure. We expect obviously solving for the
Little
snake charger
stuttering.
is pretty straightforward. It's, from a vision problem standpoint. It's like a known situation. Any kind of known situation with vision is like a charge port. It's trivial. So yeah, the cars would just automatically park and automatically plug in. There would be no human supervision required. Yeah. So what was pricing? We just threw some numbers on there. I mean, I think definitely plug in whatever pricing you think makes sense. We just kind of randomly said, okay, maybe $1. And the thing is, there's on the order of 2 billion cars and trucks in the world. So robotaxis will be in extremely high demand for a very long time.
Well, definitely, Elon's saying buy the car. They're talking about buy or lease, Lord.
Very slow to adapt. I mean, like I said, there's still not a
Because they won't let you
today that is as good
keep
as
it after the lease.
was in 2012.
That's their threat anyway.
So that suggests a pretty slow rate of adaptation for the car industry, and so probably $1 is conservative for the next 10 years, because people sort of think there's actually not enough appreciation for the difficulty of manufacturing. Manufacturing is insanely difficult.
You're welcome.
A lot of people I talk to think if you just have the right design, you can instantly make as much of that thing as the world wants. This is not true. it's extremely hard to design a new manufacturing system for new technology. I mean, Audi's having major problems manufacturing e-tron, and they're extremely good at manufacturing. And if they're having problems, what about others? So there's on the order of 2 billion cars and trucks in the world, on the order of about 100 million units per year of production capacity of vehicles, but only of the old design. It will take a very long time to convert all of that to full self-driving cars. And they really need to be electric because the cost of operation of a gasoline diesel car is much higher than an electric car. So any robotaxi that isn't electric will absolutely not be competitive.
Elon, it's Colin Rush from Oppenheimer over here. Obviously we appreciate that the customers are fronting some of the cash for this fleet getting built up, but it sounds like a massive balance sheet commitment from the organization over the course of time. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, what your expectations are in terms of financing over the next, call it 3 years, 4 years, for building up this fleet and starting to monetize it with your customer base?
Well, we're aiming to be approximately cash flow neutral during the fleet build-up phase, and then I would expect to be extremely cash flow positive once the robotaxis are enabled. But I don't want to talk about financing rounds. It would be difficult to talk about financing rounds in this venue, but I think we'll make the right moves. I think we'll make the moves you think we should make.
I have a question. If I'm Uber, why wouldn't I just buy all your cars? Why wouldn't I let you put me out of business?
There's a clause that we put into our cars. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. They can only be used in the Tesla network.
So even a private person, like if I go out and buy 10 Model 3s, I can run it on the network. That's a business now, right?
You're only allowed to use the Tesla network.
Right, but if I use the Tesla network, in theory, I could run a car sharing robo-taxi business with my 10 Model 3s.
Yes, but it's like the App Store. You can only add or remove them through the Tesla network, and then Tesla gets revenue share.
But similar to Airbnb, though, in that I have this home, my car, and now I can just rent them out. So I can make an extra income from owning multiple cars and just renting them out. Like I have a Model 3. I aspire to get this Roadster here next when you build it, and I'm going to just rent my Model 3 out. Why would I give it back to you,
I guess you could operate a rental car fleet, but I think this is very unwieldy. Yeah.
I don't know. Seems easy.
Okay.
It does.
Buy it.
Buy some low-end Model 3s, not the 35,000 one, because there's no autopilot. You got to buy the 37, 38 one, like you said.
In order to operate a robotaxi network, it sounds like you have to solve certain problems. Like, for example, autopilot today, if you oversteer, it lets you take over. But if it's, if it's a ride-sharing product that someone else is getting in the passenger seat, like moving the steering can't let that person take over the car, for example, because they might not even be in the driver's seat. So is the hardware already there for it to be a robo-taxi, and it might get into situations such as a cop pulling it over where some human might need to intervene, like using central fleet of operators that remotely sort of interact with humans, or, I mean, is all of that type of infrastructure already built into each of the cars? Does that make sense?
It has enough sensors to do that. It does.
Sort of a phone home thing where if the car gets stuck,
you can program it with software.
To Tesla and ask for a solution. Things like being pulled over for, by a police officer. That's easy for us to program in. That's not a problem. It will be possible for somebody to take over using the steering wheel, or at least for some period of time, and then probably down the road we'll just cap the steering wheel so that there's no steering control. We'll just take the steering wheel off, put a cap on. At the end of the long, give it like a couple years.
Hardware modification to the car in order for it to enable that, or?
Yeah, we literally just unbolt the steering wheel and put a cap on where the steering wheel handle currently is.
but that is a like future car that you would put out. But what about today's cars where the steering wheel is a
I don't think that guy
mechanism to take
understood.
over
Let's cap
autopilot?
it.
Like, so if it's in a robotaxi mode, would someone be able to take it over by just simply moving the steering wheel type?
Yes. I think there'll be a transition period where people will be able to take over and should be able to take over from the robotaxi. And then once regulators...
It's kind of like going to veganism. There'll be a transition period, like we're in now.
And cars that are in the fleet, you know, obviously with the permission of the owner, if it's owned by somebody else, we would just take the steering wheel off and put a cap where the steering wheel currently touches.
So there might be like two phases to robotaxi. One where the service is provided and you come in as the driver, but could potentially take over, and then in the future there might not be a driver option. Is that how you see it as well, or like?
In the future, the probability of the steering wheel being taken away in the future is 100%. Consumers will demand it.
But initially you would
I'm going to be clear. This is not me prescribing a point of view about the world. This is me predicting what consumers will demand. Consumers will demand in the future that people are not allowed to drive these 2-ton death machines.
I totally agree.
And the insurance companies as well.
In order for a Model 3...
Yeah, that guy definitely doesn't understand. He shouldn't even be allowed in there.
You would then get into the driver's seat essentially, because just to be on the same... Okay.
Yeah, the insurance companies will demand that self-driving cars be across the board.
There were amphibians, you know, but then pretty much things just become like land creatures. There'll be a little bit of sort of an amphibian phase.
Hi.
Sorry, I see what the... Okay.
Yes. The strategy we've heard from other players in the robotaxi space is to select a certain municipal area to create geo-fenced self-driving. That way you're using an HD map to have a more confined area with a bit more safety. We didn't hear much today around the importance of HD maps. To what extent is an HD map necessary for you? And second, we also didn't hear much about deploying this into specific municipalities where you're working with the municipality to get the buy-in from them, and you're also getting a more defined area. So what's the importance of HD maps, and to what extent are you looking at specific municipalities for rollout?
I think HD maps are a mistake. We actually had
It's
HD
like
maps
LiDAR.
for a while. Actually can't that. Because you either need HD maps, in which case, if anything changes about the environment, the car will break down.
Or if the map's not updated.
HD maps, in which case, why are you wasting your time doing HD maps? So the HD maps thing is like the two main crutches that should not be used and will, in retrospect, be obviously false and foolish are LiDAR and HD maps.
There you go. That's what he said. Yeah.
Mark my words.
Hello.
If you need a geofenced area, you don't have real self-driving.
It sounds like maybe battery supply could be the only bottleneck left towards this vision. And also, could you just clarify how you get the battery packs to last 1 million miles?
I think cells will be a constraint. That's
I agree, Lord.
That's a whole separate subject. I think we're actually going to want to push our sort of standard range plus battery more than our long range battery, because the energy content in the long range pack is 50% higher kilowatt hours.
Diminishing returns.
So essentially, you can make, you know, a third more cars if they're all sort of standard range plus instead of the long range pack. So one's like around 50 kilowatt hours, the other one's around 75 kilowatt hours. So we're actually probably going to bias our sales intentionally towards the smaller battery pack in order to have a higher volume of what basically the obvious thing to do is to maximize the number of autonomous units, or the number of maximize the output that will subsequently result in the biggest autonomous fleet down the road. So we're doing a number of things in that regard, but it's just not for today's meeting. The million-mile life is basically just about getting the cycle life of the
The batteries is it. That's the Achilles heel. The rest of the car should last $1 million.
On the order, like let's say you've got it's basic math. If you've got a 250 mile range pack, you're going to need 4,000 cycles. So, very achievable. We already do that with our
oh boy, I've got over 1,000 cycles already.
Stationary storage solutions like PowerPack. We're ready to deploy PowerPack with 4,000 cycle life capability.
Can I ask?
Sorry.
I wanted to ask.
It's like ventriloquism, right? Yeah.
No, it's obviously significantly, very constructive margin implications to the extent you can drive attach rates much higher of the full self-driving option. I'd just be curious if you can level set kind of where you are in terms of those attach rates and how you expect to educate consumers about the robotaxi scenario so that attach rates do materially improve over time.
Sorry, it's a bit hard to hear your question.
Yeah, just curious where we are today in terms of full self-driving attach rates, in terms of the financial implications. I think it's hugely beneficial if those attach rates materially increase because of the higher gross margin dollar that flow through to the extent people do sign up for full FSD. Just curious how you see that ramping. Or what the attach rates are today versus, when do you expect, how do you expect to educate consumers and get them?
What's he talking about with attach rates? I think it's Elon's not sure about attach rates.
We're going to ramp that up massively after today. Yeah. I mean, the fundamental message that consumers should be taking today is that it's financially insane to buy anything other than a Tesla. It'll be like owning a horse in 3 years. I mean, fine if you want to own a horse, but you should go into it with that expectation. If you buy a car that does not have the hardware necessary for full self-driving, it's like buying a horse. And the only car that has the hardware necessary for full self-driving is a Tesla.
Well, he's making some good statements there.
Like, people should really think about their approaches.
Wonder what the sales levels and stock price is going to do now.
It's basically crazy to buy any other car than a Tesla. We need to convey that argument clearly, and we will have.
Doesn't make economic sense, that's for sure. I will say that. Doesn't make economic sense.
Thanks for bringing the future to present. Very informational time today. I was wondering, you did not talk much about Tesla pickup. And let me give a context for that.
Here we go.
I could be wrong, but the way I'm looking at Tesla network, it will, as an early adopter and something as a test bed, I think Tesla's pickup may be the first phase of putting the vehicles in network, because the utility of Tesla pickup would be pretty much people who are either loading a lot of stuff or are in the profession of construction or little here and there odd items, like picking up stuff from Home Depot. Sure. So I would say that, maybe it needs to have a two-stage process. Pickup trucks exclusively for Tesla network as a starting point, and people like me can buy them later. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, today was really just about autonomy. There's a lot that we could talk about, such as cell production, pickup truck, and future vehicles. But today was just to focus on autonomy. And I agree, it's a major thing. I'm very excited for the Tesla pickup truck to unveil later this year. It's going to be great.
Colin Lang in UBS. Just so that we understand the definitions, when you refer to feature complete self-driving, it sounds like you're talking level 5, no geofence. Is that what's expected by the end of the year? Just so we're all on the same page. And then the regulatory process, I mean, have you talked to regulators about this? This seems quite an aggressive timeline from what other people have put out there. I mean, are they, what are the hurdles that are needed, and what is the timeline to get approval? And do you need things like in California, I know they're tracking miles that, what's an operator behind that? Do you need those things? What is that process going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to regulators around the world all the time. As we introduce, additional features like navigate on autopilot, this requires regulatory approval on a per jurisdiction basis. So But I think fundamentally regulators, in my experience, are convinced by data. So if you have a massive amount of data that shows that autonomy is safe, they listen to it. They may take time to digest the information. The process may take a bit of time, but they have always come to the right conclusion from what I've seen.
I have a question over here.
I've got lights in my eyes and a pillar. Okay.
I just wanted to some of the work we've done trying to better understand the ride-hail market. It looks like it's very concentrated in major dense urban centers. So is the way to think about this that the robo-taxis would probably deploy more into that area, and the additional full self-driving for personally owned vehicles would be in the suburban areas?
I think probably
That's a good
Tesla-owned
question.
robo-taxis would be in dense urban areas along with customer vehicles, and then as you get to medium and low density areas, it would tend to be more that people own the car and occasionally lend it out.
What's going on now? Silent.
Yeah, there are a lot of edge cases in Manhattan and, say, downtown San Francisco. But those are...
Remember, these are also the most difficult areas to drive in.
That have
And a 25% range penalty, as you said earlier. 25%. If you're paying for electricity, that's a lot.
Issue. When I say future complete, I mean it'll work in downtown San Francisco and downtown Manhattan this year.
Hi, I have a neural net architecture question. Do you use different models for, say, path planning and perception, or different types of AI, and sort of how do you split up that problem across the different pieces of autonomy?
Well, essentially, right now AI or neural nets are used really for object recognition, and we're still basically just using it as still frames, so identifying objects in still frames and tying it together in a perception path planning layer thereafter. But what's happening steadily is that the neural net is kind of eating into the software base more and more. And so over time, we expect the neural net to do more and more. Now from a computational cost standpoint, there are some things that are very simple for a heuristic and very difficult for a neural net. And so it probably makes sense to maintain some level of heuristics in the system because they're just computationally 1,000 times easier than a neural net. Like a neural net is like a cruise missile. And if you're trying to swat a fly, just use a fly swatter, not a cruise missile. But over time, I would expect that it moves really to just training against video, and then video in, car is steering and pedals out. Or basically, video in, lateral and longitudinal acceleration out, almost entirely. That's what we're going to use the Dojo system for. There's no system that can currently do that.
Maybe over here, just going back to the sensor suite discussion, Elon, the one area I'd like to just talk about is a lack of side radars in a situation where you have an intersection with a stop sign where there's maybe a 35, 40 mile per hour cross traffic. Are you comfortable with the sensor suite, the side cameras being able to handle that? Just maybe talk a little bit about
Yeah, no problem. I mean, essentially the car is going to do kind of what a human would do. And you can think of a human as like basically a camera on a slow gimbal. And it's quite remarkable that people are able to drive the car in the way that they are, because if you can't look in all directions at once. The car can literally look in all directions at once with multiple cameras.
Definitely.
So,
no way people can do that.
Humans are able
Just
to
not
drive just
alone.
by sort of looking this way, looking that way. They're actually stuck in their driver's seat. They can't really get out of the driver's seat. So it's like kind of one camera on a gimbal, and is able to drive, conscientious driver can drive with very high safety. the cameras in the cars have a better vantage point than the person. So they're like up in the B pillar or in front of the rearview mirror. They've really got a great vantage point. So if you're turning onto a road that's got a lot of high-speed traffic, you can just do what person does, just turn a little bit, then go fully into the road, let the camera see what's going on, and if things look good, and then the rear cameras don't show on any oncoming traffic, off you go. And if it looks sketchy, you can just pull back a little bit, just like a person. The behavior is like it starts to become remarkably lifelike. It's like quite eerie, actually. The car just starts behaving like a person.
Over here. Here we go. Ventriloquist, right here.
Okay.
Given all the value you're creating in your auto business by wrapping all of this technology around your cells, I guess I'm curious as to why you would still be taking some of your cell capacity and putting it into Powerwall and PowerPack. Wouldn't it make sense to put every single unit you can make into this part of your business?
Interesting.
We've already stolen almost all the cell lines that were meant to go to Powerwall and PowerPack and use them for Model 3. I mean, last year, in order to make our Model 3 production and not be cell stocked, we had to convert all of the 2170 lines at the Gigafactory to car cells.
That's why I haven't received my Powerwall yet.
So actual output in total gigawatt hours of stationary storage compared to vehicles is an order of magnitude different. And for stationary storage, we can basically use a whole bunch of miscellaneous cells out there. So we can just gather cells from multiple suppliers all around the world, and you don't have a homologation issue or a safety issue like you have with cars. So that's basically our stationary battery business has been just kind of beating up scraps for quite a while. Yeah. But like, I really think of like the production as being there are many constraints of a massive production system. It's like the degree to which manufacturing and supply chain is underappreciated is amazing. There are a whole series of constraints, and what is the constraint in one week may not be the constraint in another week. It's insanely difficult to make a car, especially one which is rapidly evolving. So, yeah, but I'll just take a few more questions, and then I think we should just break for so you can try out the cars.
Hi, Elon. Adam Jonas. Questions on safety. What data can you share with us today on how safe this technology is, which would obviously be important in a regulatory or insurance discussion?
Well, we publish the accidents per mile every quarter, and what we see right now is that Autopilot is about twice as safe as a normal driver on average, and we expect that to increase quite a bit over time. Like I said, in the future, it will be consumers will want to outlaw. I'm not saying they will succeed, nor am I saying I agree with this position, but in the future, consumers will want to outlaw people driving their own cars because there's
too dangerous. Insurance companies will do that for us.
Elevators used to be operated on a big lever, like you go up and down the floor. There's like a big relay, and you had elevator operators. But then periodically, they would get tired or drunk or something, and then they'd turn the lever at the wrong time and sever somebody in half. So now you do not have elevator operators, and it would be quite alarming if you went into an elevator that had a big lever that could just move between floors arbitrarily. So there's just buttons. And in the long term, again, not a value judgment, I'm not saying I want the world to be this way. I'm saying consumers will most likely demand that the people are not allowed to drive cars.
Elon, a follow-up. Can you share with us how much Tesla is spending on autopilot or autonomous technology by order of magnitude on an annual basis? Thank you.
It's basically our entire expense structure.
Question on the economics of the Tesla network, just so I understand. It looked like, so you get
Model 3 off lease, $25,000 goes on the balance sheet, would be an asset, and then it would cash flow $30,000 a year, roughly. Is that the way to think about?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then just in terms of the financing of it, there was a question earlier. You mentioned you would do it. Is it cash flow neutral to the robotaxi program or cash flow neutral to Tesla as a whole?
It's like renting a house.
In terms of, he asked a question about financing the robotaxi. It looks to me like they're self-financing, but you mentioned they would be basically cash flow neutral. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm just saying between now and when the robotaxis are fully deployed throughout the world, the sensible thing for us is to maximize rate and drive the company to cash flow neutral.
The company.
Once the robotaxi fleet is active, I would expect to be extremely cash flow positive.
And so you were talking about production.
Yeah.
To produce them. Okay, thanks.
Maximize the number of
Not owners, not ownership. That's different.
Okay, just maybe
He's
one
not getting
last
into that.
question.
Here, if I add my Tesla to the robotaxi network, who is liable for an accident? Is it Tesla or is it me? If the vehicle has an accident that harms
I think
somebody
probably
else.
Tesla. It's probably Tesla. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that'll be reflected in my insurance rates.
The right thing
Shift
to
the
do is
liability to Tesla.
Very, very few accidents.
I like that.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Please enjoy the drives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, good presentation. I will give my follow-up later with answers to a lot of questions that were brought up at this, and also things that have not yet been answered that I'm not sure about. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I gotta find out how to turn this thing off. How do I do that? Let's see. All right, well, let me flip it around. So I gotta go off to my meeting now. Ooh, I guess I got a time on there. I'm in a weird spot here recording. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And I will check you, like I said, keep subscribed to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. It was a lot of info, a lot to digest. I'm going to be thinking about this and making some new videos based on this. Some of the points that were brought up there. I'm going to go actually back and review the video too in certain spots and remember what was said before I make my follow-up videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next video.